All right, man. Well, it's good to have you on, Derrick.
Thanks
I
for having
appreciate
me.
you coming on, man. I know we've been chatting for a while. Kind of, had we? I think we started talking initially when San Antonio happened, or the Hill Country happened with the flooding, and you were going to come out and help out. We were sharing locations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I kind of followed you, checked out your page and stuff, and then obviously, the really, really unfortunate incident with your son. And I've seen how you've bounced from that situation, which, I mean, till this day, I still even tell people, like, I don't know how he does it. So my hat's off to you, man. Like, that's really huge. And I think that's why I really wanted you on this podcast, because from when I first met you, it was right away to our conversations where you wanted to see what you needed to do to go help people that were in that flood.
Yeah.
And you had that like sense of service already right off the bat that I met you. And then to see what you're doing now after your son's, event is huge, because it just shows the kind of person that you have inside of you, right? Not a lot of people would be willing to do those kind of things. So I'm excited to have you on, man. I know you've had quite a bit of career yourself, and I think that aligns perfectly with this podcast and getting those kind of stories out, people like yourself, to hopefully motivate somebody that's listening. But we'll kind of give a quick introduction.
Okay.
Derrick Balderas, right? Is that how you? All right. I always like make sure I say it right.
I can't roll the R, but yeah, that sounded good.
Yeah. So I grew up in El Paso, so I'm cheating.
go.
You obviously you started off in the Army, right? And then after the Army, you went into law enforcement. And then now you're just like out there making videos, doing triathlons and doing all kinds of stuff. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's motivating, man. You actually motivated me to get myself back into doing things like that. And I'm actually gonna start off with high rocks first, just to kind of get going. Yeah, and then before COVID happened, I was actually prepping for a triathlon here in Houston. Actually, I was living in New Mexico at the time, and COVID happened, and the triathlon got canceled. I was already doing everything. I was where I wanted to be. I was excited. Like 3 weeks out from the triathlon, and it canceled. And after that, I was like, man, I gave up. And then I got fat for a couple of years. I was like super fat, man.
It happens,
and,
bro. It happens.
But I'm back on the rhythm again. I'm doing things, and I saw your story, and I was like, man, if he can do that, so can I. Like I have no freaking excuse to not go out there and get it. So that's been pretty motivating for myself. So that's why I really wanted to have your story on here, man. So
thank you. How do you know Sean Thornton?
So the way I met him was initially we started off with, I had gone out for a class, some mutual friends. And then I know a couple other guys like Steven and all those guys, hang out with some of my friends. And then we had gone to the night vision class that he gives.
Okay.
And then at that point he was like, hey, we're just chatting about my podcast. And I was like, man, I would like to have you on. Started talking about his background and everything.
Yeah, he has a cool little story.
Yeah. And then the crazy thing about that is I have a neighbor who used to be like best friends with one of Sean's really close friends and partner at Pasadena.
Yeah.
And he passed, and my neighbor, we smoke cigars, and he's always telling me the stories and stuff. And then literally during our podcast, Sean was talking about that story. And then my neighbor's like, holy crap. And then the story got out, and then the podcast got out, and then that guy, Larry Candelaria, his son listened to the podcast, who's a recon Marine. He's actually now with the agency we were just talking about.
I watched the episode.
Yeah, and he freaking, like, is a small world that just connected. And it's funny because my kids do music, and the other day I was at the music class, and there was this guy that went in, he's learning guitar. He's actually the sergeant of that officer. Like, he was even texting his dad prior to that all happening. And I'm like, what a small world. So he knew Sean as well. I was like, what the heck? I was like, everything seems to be a big circle. So, and obviously now you know Sean. I know you go to the range out there and stuff. So
Sean's a great guy, man.
Super good guy.
He's been there for me since, losing my son. He's invited me to some things, and he's always been someone that I could go to and talk to. He's a godly man. He's just a really good guy, and so
it's as real as they come.
Yeah.
So I really think I like him a lot. Just talking to him one day, we were sitting on his side by side there at the range, and talking to him, I was like, man, I really want to get his story out. And even listening to his story, it's like, man, like this dude's been through the ringer, and to be able to come out and after living that kind of life, and then be the kind of guy he is now, you know, worshiping God, and then his business that he runs and stuff. He's got a really nice range. Like,
Oh man, the range is great. So
amazing.
so I live about 20 minutes like from that range. So that's my
Nice.
home range, and I've been there since day one. I was there for the grand opening, and yeah, man, he's just so passionate about training. He's passionate about police officers. He's passionate about, like, you know, just everything that involves making us better.
Yep.
And
It's huge on accountability.
I just wish, man, he had more support. I wish that the departments around him, and it's starting to come to fruition.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's starting to have more departments come and do corporate contracts and stuff. So we're kind of seeing a shift, at least in my area, that departments are using his range now for their you know, home base for their training. So that's great.
You know, there's so much. It's funny because when I catch myself training, I'm in San Antonio is where I'm training, or New Braunfels area. It's either if I've gone to Slick's place, or I've been now hitting up Battlegrounds, just because we've done a lot of content there at their place. But it's kind of crazy because there's other states and cities that wish they had those kind of resources. Like, I mean, Sean has an amazing shoot house there as well. The range is amazing. My old agency, I wish we had that kind of stuff there.
Oh, for sure.
We used to have to travel to go get that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it says a lot when I'm willing to drive down I-10 with that horrible traffic to go train up there, because there's really good resources. So I really hope that the local agencies and stuff can start utilizing that, man.
Yeah, so Justin with Battlegrounds, he's a good friend of mine. I helped him, you know, try to get the trash and stuff and get that building like ready to go. And man, he's done such a great job, and it looks like, you know, he's starting to, that building and what he's doing is really coming together. And so I know a lot of federal departments are using it, SAPD, Bexar County. And so that's definitely something that in our area, there's nothing like that.
No,
like you have to
not.
go down to Dilly, like to the ranch.
Yeah.
Or you'll have to, you know, schedule with Alert.
Yeah.
But, you know, this place is perfect. And so I've done training like out there. Like I said, like Justin's my friend, so I'm there like quite a bit, and it's just getting better like every day. Like every week he's starting to add on more and
that's
more.
we actually did our last time out there. Well, second to last, it was when he had just finished that team room that he's got there. He had just finished the, like, you know, to put your stuff down and everything, and he had done it the night before. And that day we actually blew a hole through one of his walls with one of the bangs that we shot. And we were like, hey man, we're sorry. And he's like, no, it's cool, man. He's actually looks pretty cool and stuff. So and Justin's a really cool guy. He's super open to letting us use his place, and he wants everybody to use it. I think he's just like what we were talking about earlier. He's got one thing in common that a lot of us have, is we just want people to train and get better and go and work on these things, especially when you're in law enforcement, because you and I both can agree here that, I mean, I think people have this perspective of law enforcement's perfect when it comes to those things, and they're actually far from, right? And training is important, right? Like, I feel like there's some agencies that don't incorporate the training that they should, and then they wonder why their officers fail under pressure. But if you're not having those reps, like, there's no reason for me now, being in the civilian world, to be doing more reps in a shoot house than an actual officer who lives in a decent sized city, right? Like, they should be out there getting the training. And I know some people will sit there and say like, oh, CQB is overrated and stuff, but it's not. It's those repetitions that you need. You need to keep having those reps, just like going to the range. If your daily job requires you to carry a freaking sidearm, you should know how to utilize that thing, right? And like, yeah, I don't do that anymore, but I still train with it. I still want to know, or not want to know, but I still want to make sure that, you know, I'm proficient with that thing, right? So I think that that's something hopefully law enforcement can start to titrate into and really incorporate better training. But I think administration is our biggest, you know, hold up for stuff like that. So
I don't understand how, and this is something that I would love to one day go and speak to retired sheriffs and chiefs now that they can openly speak, is how is training budget not a priority? How is that not priority at least number 2? You know, I understand how it can't be number 1, but it should be like number 2, you know, and it's just not.
yeah.
But, you know, we'll see people going to conferences and other things that just don't, you know, like, what does a conference do for that department? What does that conference do for those officers on patrol?
Yeah.
It does nothing.
Yeah. This episode of Calling Your Shot is brought to you by Operation Path Forward, a nonprofit based in Montana, dedicated to supporting active duty military, veterans, and first responders. Founded by Navy veteran Timothy DeMeo and his wife Tabitha, Operation Path Forward provides curated care packages, and is developing a wilderness retreat in Montana to offer holistic healing through nature, community, and specialized therapies. By partnering with veteran-owned businesses and like-minded organizations, they deliver morale-boosting resources and practical gear to those who have served. To support their mission or nominate a hero for a care package, visit operationpathforward.org. Again, operationpathforward.org. Operation Path Forward, because no hero should have to walk alone. Check them out, guys. Operation Path Forward. This episode of Calling Your Shot is brought to you by Berserker Built, a veteran-owned brand where artistry meets purpose. Founded by U.S. Navy veteran Timothy DeMeo, Berserker Built crafts custom skateboards and apparel inspired by Viking and Norse designs. But they're more than just a brand. They're on a mission to support mental health initiatives for veterans and first responders battling with PTSD, TBI, and much more. Each purchase contributes to this cause, turning functional art into a beacon of hope. Whether you're looking for a unique board or gear that stands for something greater, Berserker Built delivers quality with a conscience. Explore the collection and support the mission at berserkerbuilt.com. Again, berserkerbuilt.com. Berserker Built, crafted with purpose and driven by honor.
But yet an officer puts in for training and gets denied because of budget. But you just sent 3 or 4 guys to a conference in Florida. And it's like, man, that conference that you just spent money on could have probably sent an entire shift to training.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's just the mindset that needs to be switched. And I think it's coming together. Like we're seeing a lot more departments, invest in their officers, but it's still just not to there where it needs to be.
Well, I think even like Conroe PD here lately and Montgomery County, the SO, they had GBRS down here in the shoot house with them, like going through reps and training and stuff. They were here for I believe over a week. Yeah. And it was cool to see like departments finally seeking out like, hey, we need to start bringing these guys in or sending our guys out. It's important, right? Because when you're in those high stress situations, like you and I have both been in before, I think sometimes you can train all you want. Doesn't mean you're going to perform, right? So if you're not training at all, like your performance level is probably not going to be there. And I think that's how mistakes happen and stuff like that. And then that's where the scrutiny comes. Law enforcement, they're terrible people and stuff. But I think a lot of it has to do with training, because that builds up confidence. Yeah. And if you don't have a confident officer out there, like that's when you have a recipe for, destruction. But
I don't know how much GBRS, costs to bring them out here. But if a department can bring someone of that caliber out here, that's great. But you have guys like Sean, you have guys.
Correct.
You have companies like Covenant Training Group with Nate. He's Bear County SWAT. And San Antonio, that county, we're like the 6th, 7th largest city in the nation.
Yeah.
So this SWAT team is pretty legit.
Yeah.
You have these departments that have great guys with great experience and have the skill set to bring training to the area that doesn't cost you as much as bringing in GBRS or some of these better known. If you can do it, great. I've been to some of those classes, and you're going to learn something from everybody.
Correct.
But when you say, hey, I can't afford it because it's going to cost too much to bring them in, okay, we have a local guys. You have local companies that will almost do it for free.
No, and I think that's where, like, for me, the thing with Sean that stood out to me is I had been out of the game for a while. And I took that CQB course at that old hospital that he uses, I think it was like a mental health
place.
That's
on the Bear County.
Yeah, and
training grounds.
I have to say, man, I was really impressed. I was really impressed with the way he teaches. He's a very patient dude. He really. There was moments where he kind of got a little bit flustered with people, but that's because they were just sitting down, not wanting to train, or kind of just wasting time because they were tired. And I like what he said. He's like, you're paying for this, man. You're paying for this. Get out here and train, Yeah. And I really admired Sean's class. And I think he's underestimated by a lot of people because he has a boatload of knowledge. He knows what he's doing, and he has a shitload of experience. Yeah. He's got a lot of experience from the local police department in Pasadena, but the guy pretty much moved into Iraq for multiple years. He played in that arena for a very long time. Yeah. And not just with, a random security contracting company. He was legit, working on some pretty good contracts out there. So, and taking care of some important people. So he's a really good asset, especially in this region. I hope that his place can be utilized a lot more, and people
Yeah.
can start to really take advantage of what he has.
I try to push it out there. So what I have found, and what's funny too, because I hear in law enforcement a lot that, well, law enforcement and military, like they're not the same thing, right? But yet I'm okay, well, then why are you hiring nothing but military companies to come out and train y'all? So
Yeah.
which one is it?
Because
Right?
GBRS, they're not law enforcement; they're straight military guys.
Yeah. And so like, unfortunately when people are looking and they don't understand training themselves, which would be like your administration, it's like, okay, well, oh, he's a SEAL, he's Delta. They have these keywords in their resumes, which yes, I mean great.
Yeah,
But
but-
someone like Sean, like his background is incredible.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I tell everybody, like I've been to classes from companies like GBRS, not that one, but to that caliber. And I would put Sean's class ahead of that.
Yeah.
Just the way he teaches, how he explains things. Like you can be Delta, you can be a SEAL and not be able to instruct.
Correct.
And he's able.
That doesn't make you a perfectionist at all.
Yeah, and somehow he's able to really break down like things that people are doing. He can look at you, break it down, work with you, and almost correct it right there on the spot. It's not going to be permanent, but he can at least guide you to what you need to do.
Yeah.
When you see a lot of times, it's like, okay, well, people will just preach the fundamentals. Hey, make sure the trigger squeeze is smooth,
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not helping me.
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing? Can you visually look at me and see exactly what I'm doing wrong?
Yeah.
And that's something that Sean and his cadre, and I've been to multiple classes with him, that they're able to do that. They can look at you and really dissect what it is they think that you're doing, and then they have things to help you correct those problems.
Yeah.
And man, like and I try to tell that to departments like all over my area, that you don't need to go out and get these like you have it right here.
Yeah.
And Sean's a great tool.
Yeah, no, and his guys he's got out there are legit, and I like the way he vets people. He just doesn't bring anybody onto his team and stuff. So it's really good, man. I think hopefully we can get some more stuff going out that way for him. It'll be great. But yeah, so now we started off pretty heavy there on talking about training and stuff. But no, I think I really want to start off with you, man. Like young you, where did it all start for you, brother?
So I was born in Austin, but I grew up in a town just outside of San Antonio called Shirts.
Okay.
And so, people probably know New Braunfels.
Yeah.
So Shirts is right next to there. Grew up there, went to high school there, joined the military like from there, and went to Clemens. So growing up, I was a sports player, played all kinds of sports. Football and baseball was kind of like my main thing. Baseball was kind of what I gravitated towards. I had a scholarship for college. Went to college and played baseball. Got into some trouble, so I had to leave college. Lost my scholarship, but soon after that, I joined the Army. So that was 2005. At that time, I knew nothing about the Army. I really didn't have family that was in the military, other than my grandfather, who was in the Korean War during that time frame. And that was so long ago. And so I never had a desire to join. I never thought I would join the military. Back in those days, if y'all can remember that when the war kicked off, it was on the news 24/7.
24/7, yeah.
Like you could watch it. So I remember in high school, we used to watch the news, and it was constant. And I just never had.
And it never
desire.
really seemed biased. It was always the same thing. Like talking about the initial approach to Baghdad, everybody was like on the same page about it initially, until now. But yeah, it was. Yeah, I remember that, man.
Yeah, and baseball was my life. I thought I was going to go play pro baseball and had that as my career. But things happen, make mistakes, you learn from them, and then I joined the Army Infantry in 2005.
Okay, how was that for you? Like, did you feel like you had initially like a sense of service that you wanted to go to the military, or was that just kind of like did it fall on you?
Not the military. So my dad is a retired police officer.
Okay.
So I grew up around cops. I knew I had a desire to be a cop one day if baseball didn't work out. But at 18 years old, I'm just living like by the day.
Yeah.
I really didn't have a plan. And again, I was very successful in baseball in high school. And so that was my plan, was to go play pro ball. And, I had the ability and skill set to do that. Early on, I had some opportunities from pro scouts and stuff that were looking at me. And so, that was where my focus was on. But once I kind of got myself in trouble and left college and and started thinking about what I want to do next. The military kind of, hit me. And that was kind of during like the Black Hawk Down, like movies and stuff. So,
Yeah.
You kind of got a sense during that time of, that pride. And if I was going to join the military, it was going to be the infantry.
When you first joined, did you realize you pretty much were going to be going to war, like at that time? Because, I mean, you joined right at the time where it was like things were really starting to pick up in the Middle East.
Yeah, so there was a guy, Jimmy Kleckler. He was from Shirts, a little bit older than me. He had joined the Air Force, became a SEER instructor. And long story short, he became an officer and a combat controller and was in the SOF community. He just retired not too long ago, but he was probably the only one that I really knew that was doing stuff. And so I took the ASVAB to join the Air Force, but I had gotten into a little bit of trouble and I couldn't get my security clearance like coming in, and I had to get some waivers. Yeah. So trying to join like the 18 X-ray or the 40 contract for a Ranger Battalion, I couldn't do that. Like I'm coming in because I couldn't get my clearance.
Yeah.
And so infantry at the time was, hey, 3 years, 20 grand as a bonus. I was like, shoot, like I'll do that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I didn't really, like my life was moving so fast. I went from 100% focus on baseball, college to I'm in basic training for infantry. And I don't think I really slowed down to really take it all in or think about it until I got to my first duty station. And that's where things kind of slowed down. I came to like a realization like, man, you just spent 18 years or, 15 years playing baseball and that was your whole life. And now that's over and now you're doing this.
Yeah.
And so, there's a little depression when things started to slow down because I was like, man, like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But, I mean, looking back, it's probably the best thing I could have done. It's been a blessing, from everything it's provided me today and for my family and stuff like that.
How long after you went to basic and stuff and getting your unit did you get deployed?
So I graduated basic in November of 05. I was deployed in August of 06. When I was at Fort Drum, so 10th Mountain, 214.
Okay.
That was my
Where's your first
unit.
deployment to?
Iraq. So we went to Yusufia, so the Triangle of Death.
Yeah.
That was a 15-month deployment, 06, 07. And that was when I think when George Bush came up and got on the news and says, hey, we're extending you. So I think we're at month 9 or 10 when George Bush said that, hey, we're being extended. And so that's when we knew.
Yeah, it's interesting because my nephew's in the Marine Corps right now, and he's now a drill instructor. But when he did his deployment, he's like, man, like 6 months. And I was like, dude, you should have seen how the deployments were before. These guys were there for like damn near 3 years. Like it was just constantly getting extended. I remember back in those days where, I grew up in El Paso next to Fort Bliss. So, best friend, his dad was in the Army. And I remember when he was out there, his mom was like, he just got extended another 6 months. It's like, dang, like, it's long deployments. And it's not like these were like stationary deployments. Like I'm sure you guys were moving, right? Like you guys were getting into it out there.
Man, when I first went up to Fort Drum, the unit, the guys that just got back from Soldier City. So this was 2004, like Soldier City, and people that were in back then and know that time period know that Soldier City in that time was very hot. Yeah. And so they had a very hard deployment. And so they came back. I mean, but you think about it, those guys were year on, year off for 3 or 4 or 5 years. I have buddies with 6, 7 month, year-long deployments in their career. So when you hear like, the Marines, oh, he has 10 deployments, or Ranger Bat with their 3 deployments, 3 months, oh, he has 15 deployments. I'm like, yeah, but that's like 2 years, right? But yeah, I mean, the Army guys, they were, 6, 7 years gone. Yeah. Either Iraq, Afghanistan, just
a lot of time to fight.
That's a lot, man. Like, I didn't do that, but that's a lot.
I sit back and think about it. One time I was talking to a Terp. He was an Uber driver, and he was an Afghan Terp, and he talked about how long he was out there being a Terp for. It was like 12 years out of the whole war.
It's crazy.
And I sat there and I thought about it. I was like, that guy was like legit 12 years in war, because those guys didn't really get breaks other than their time off, and they're right back at it again. And it's not like they can just go back and live a normal life in Afghanistan. They're already marked off as helping the Americans.
Yeah.
And you sit there and think about it. You're like, dude, this guy pretty much damn near fought for 12 years and had been, dodging and ducking bullets for that long, being a Terp for the Americans. Like, and you see the poor guy out here Uber driving and stuff like that, trying to make ends meet, and you're like, you feel bad for them, man, because you're like, this guy's been in war for a long time, and then you do get, like, it's funny when you say that, and I'm not trying to knock anybody from the special operations community, because they do good work out there and stuff, but their deployments, like some of them have had, maybe 5-6 deployments, and you ask them how long they were, and shit, some of them are even like a month long. Like, it just depends on the mission that they're doing. And I get it. Sometimes they're going after HVTs and stuff like that. But I am pretty damn sure that in your long period of time that you were there in Iraq as an infantry guy, it's not like you were sitting on your ass a lot of that time. I'm sure you were working and you kicking down doors and stuff. So
yeah, I mean, one thing I want the people to know, because I mean, we see all these podcasts and it's all special operation guys. Like, their stories are great. The pipeline to get into those outfits is very hard, right? But man, infantry guys, they were the backbone. Year-long deployments, and they were out there. They're patrolling, they're outside the wire day in, day out for years. They got into firefights, they got hit with IEDs. Like, they're putting in work, they're hitting like HVTs, they're going out there.
Yeah, being QRF for the SF guys too. So.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So infantry guys, they put in work. So it wasn't just special like operations. Like, they weren't by themselves like out there. There's a lot of stories, a lot of Medal of Honors and high awards I'm given to just regular infantry guys. And so I wish those stories would be told more.
I think that's something for me, like, when I had Kawa on before, when we first told his original story, like his first episode, he was in the Marine Corps Infantry during the initial invasion of Iraq. And of course, he's been a Green Beret for a very long time. But I was really curious to hear his infantry stories, because that's where it started for him. And that's where, like, and he talked about, the infantry and what it was like back then, right? Especially as a brand new Marine going into like a whole new theater of war, and, all this stuff is new for them. And I think a lot of people get fixated because of movies and stuff like that of what the military is, and they forget about the infantry guys, right? And don't get me wrong, there's other guys that are, like scouts and stuff that are out there doing things as well too. But sometimes we think that it's just the SF guys that are out there, moving dirt, and that's not the case. Like, especially with the infantry guys, they're out there, ground pounding, man, and they don't have all the resources either. Like, that's the nice thing, is a lot of SF units do have a lot of resources. They get that funding, they get the extra birds that they need, they get a lot of resources. And I'm not trying to knock on them, and I get it. They have a different mission set, and they're going after certain things that are, higher risk and stuff. But you get your traditional infantry guys out there just sleeping on the ground and kicking ass. And I feel like I've seen some people on Sean Ryan's episode that were, some prior SEALs and stuff that brought up like, hey, we don't really give the infantry the love that they need, and we should, because there's actually something very interesting that I saw there's a lot of foundations out there for special operations guys for mental health and stuff. And I'm not saying they don't deserve it, because they do. They've done their time. But there's also there is a lot, but not as pushed out there for infantry guys, to get that kind of mental help and stuff. And we just talked about them a little while ago, like Mighty Oaks with Chad Robichaux. Like, he's got a really good program out there, and, you're prior service, and you show them their DD-214, and they'll get you out there, and, it's a faith-based retreat and stuff to help out. But I feel like there needs to be more of that awareness, because I don't know about you, man, but I'm sure I can sit here and me and you can probably count a handful of people that we know from the military that took their lives post all this stuff, right? And it's devastating, man, that we don't take. I feel like we don't take care of our own as much as we should, and I feel like it's getting there, but I would like to see that more, especially for your traditional infantry guys, right? Because those guys saw it all. Those guys were right there kicking down doors, getting their ass kicked and kicking ass. Like, it's something that I believe needs to be done a little bit more. But getting back into your first deployment, man, what was it like? I mean, you're a baseball player, life changed for you. You joined the Army, and then all of a sudden now you're in Iraq. Like, what was it like? When did you finally seep in and say, like, holy shit, I'm in war?
So it was probably, I remember the first time that we were leaving the wire. I was on Camp Stryker, which was just right next to BIOP and Camp Liberty and stuff. And first time we're going outside the wire, you leave those wires, that last gate that says, like, basically, like, go red, right? And it was just surreal. Like, I'd never been to a different country before like that. You know, I'd never experienced this, but I mean, it was just, I don't even think I could process it, right? And even so my very first patrol, what we did was, where our base was, our little cop was Route Pinto. And they had an ACP checkpoint when you turned on to Route Pinto, and then they had some Humvees set up throughout that road because that road was being IED'd so much, so some overlook, right? And the very first time we went out there, one of the team leaders who was in the lead of Humvee, he spotted a tripwire IED, so he had his nods on, and the IR light just hits the copper wire I'm going across. And so, you know, he just so happened to see a flash of something, stops, and it's an IED right there. And so they didn't get hit, but, you know, that was probably the first, like, dang, like, there's bombs right here, right?
Yeah.
And even then, it still wasn't real. Like, it wasn't real for me until December 25th, Christmas of '06, when a guy named Sergeant Dinfrin, he wasn't in my platoon, he was in first platoon, but they were walking on the side, and they hit an IED, and he was killed. And so, you know, those guys, like I said, those guys went through Soldier City and deployments before that. Like, these were hard men, very experienced men. Like, you know, they were dudes that you looked up to, especially when I was 18 years old. And I'm like, damn, well, if Dinfrin can get killed, I stand no chance.
Yeah.
You know, so you start thinking like that, like, holy crap, like, this is real.
Yeah.
Like, probably my first time experiencing, like, real death, especially from, you know, someone my age. And that's kind of probably when it clicked, when I kind of sat there like, holy crap, like, that same road that I walked down and drove down, the same fields that he was in where he got hit, like, I've been right there.
Yeah.
And he didn't make it. So that was probably the realization. So that was a couple months in.
So you, after your first deployment in Iraq, you came back home, and then you went to Iraq again, or is that when you went to Afghanistan?
I went to Afghanistan in 2011.
Okay.
So,
which is another interesting time.
Yeah, that was a different type of deployment.
Yeah.
Those countries are two different countries.
Way different. Yeah. Different fighting too.
Different fighting. The way, you know, the religion is different. Mm-hmm. The way they look at it, you know, like Iraq was big, like Sunni Shiite, where Afghanistan, it's not like that.
They're very tribal and stuff.
Tribal,
well.
Yeah. So Iraq was a lot of IEDs, a lot. Afghanistan was too, but it was more fighting. Yeah. You know, complex attacks, like they would actually attack you and shoot at you and stuff. So that was a little bit different than my Iraq deployment. Iraq, the brigade lost 52 soldiers. So that was a hard deployment. 06, 07, I think the Army was taking 70 plus like soldiers a month. So it was a high KIA count like during that time. Yeah. It was during the surge.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like, but when you think about that, you know, I'd rather fight someone like face to face than get hit with them IEDs. But yeah, but that brigade lost them 52. So that was a lot.
Yeah, I think that was the hardest thing to watch all the time, seeing the news, because I remember back in the day, the news was always reporting KIAs, like what was going on, and you just see like, you know, 12 troops get hit by an IED today, and, you know, another like a Marine unit gets hit. And I think for me, I was still young. I was in middle school. Yeah, I was in middle school, and that's when in the initial invasion into Iraq, when that maintenance unit out of Fort Bliss, because I lived in El Paso, and that maintenance unit out of Fort Bliss got ambushed, and they'd taken a couple POWs. This is our first group of POWs with Shoshana Johnson and Jessica Lynch and stuff like that. And you're hearing the story, and you're like, man, these guys sounded like they had nothing to defend themselves. They're just a maintenance unit. And I actually went to the same high school that Shoshana Johnson went to, so it was like a big deal. You know, they had like, you know, a memorial for them and stuff like that. And at that time, they were still trying to figure out, you know, when because Jessica Lynch was the last, like they ended up finding her like a day or two, something later. But that's when I started realizing, like, damn, what's happening over there is crazy. Like, this is legit. Like, there's a legit war going on. I think that's for me when it started to seep in of like remembering watching 9/11 and then seeing that people from my community were getting hit and killed, and friends, family members saying like, you know, my son just died, you know, my cousin who was in Ramadi, and I had a cousin who was in the Army as well. He did his regular time in the infantry and then eventually did some ranger stuff and finally ended up commissioning. I think he hit E7 first and then he commissioned. I was like, holy crap, why'd you do that? But he did that. He stayed in for a very long time, and he pretty much was in through the whole GWAT. And those were things for me that made me realize, like, man, like, especially when it's happening to people around you, like, I was like, man, I gotta join the band too. Like, you know, and not because I thought it was cool or anything, but because what we saw happen in 9/11 and then seeing the people of your community getting hit and stuff. And I think that's where, like, you know, not to get too far off, but I think, like, you know, recently I get called like a radical and stuff because I'm very opinionated about what's going on in our current, you know, government and stuff like that. But I think people like me, you, Sean, guys like that, we have entitlement to be able to talk about those things because we're different from other people that have sat back and watched it on a TV screen all the time. We're people that have actually sacrificed our life and our time to go serve our country. And when we see that sometimes our country hasn't been so honest with us and is doing things differently, I think if anybody should be holding these people accountable, it's people like us, right? People like us who have sacrificed our time and our efforts for this country, not because we believe in politics or we believe in the greater good of what company is going to thrive after this war or whatnot, or oil, whatever it is, but because I'm pretty sure you and I both have the same logical reasoning of why we joined that military, right? It was to defend our country, defend our family, God, country, Corps, right? Well, I see God, country, and Corps, so the Marine Corps. But, you know, it's something that I never thought about, like, well, I'm over there defending the Republic. No, none of that crap. And I think what a lot of people don't understand is currently in our current society, people think that that's how the military is. Like, oh, all those military guys are all Republicans and stuff. I'm like, that's not really the case. In fact, I think we're more progressive people. We're more down the middle. We see life in both angles, right? And whenever you're in those circumstances, in those situations, you're not thinking about what politician you're fighting the war for or anything. You're thinking about making sure you're safe and the guy next to you is safe. Yeah. And we're all coming home together. You know, and I think those are the things that people overlook. So now my mom thinks I'm like radicalized or something because I'm very opinionated. And I'm like, I'm not radicalized, mother. I'm just, you know, I look into these things and, you know, I try to be respectful. But unlike you, I've seen the world in different perspectives. And I get to understand that it's not exactly what we get fed daily on the media and stuff like that. And that's why I like podcasts. I think that these are very interesting arenas for men and women to come out and have a conversation of the actual reality of it. Because we can hear a politician telling us what war's like, but we're not going to hear it from a perspective like yours right now, where you just said, I'm driving down the same damn street where somebody that you looked up to just died, and you're just realizing, like, man, I stand no match. Like, I'm not going to make it. You know, if he didn't make it, I'm not going to make it. But we listen to people who have not been in those circumstances. And I think we need to start listening to people who have been in those circumstances and who have actually lived life that way and have actually had some pain in their lives, right? And I think that's why I'm really eager to have you on this podcast today, because I know that you've lived life in multiple angles, and right now you're living it in a whole different angle. And to see what you're doing with it is very, very, I don't want to say impressive, but it's shocking to me, right? Because I'll be honest with you, I've seen the devil many times in my life, right? But when I saw what happened to you and your son, or what happened to your son, and seeing your response afterwards, like, you know, I'd send you a message every now and then, how you doing and stuff like that, because I'm like, I don't want to bother you, but at the same time, I'm like, man, I can't only not understand the pain that you're going through, right? And to see what you've turned it into is amazing. And I hope you continue to push Christian's legacy like that. And
that's where, like, people such as yourself, you know, like, have reached out. So sometimes I feel like it's people you don't expect have reached out a little bit more. And so, I mean, not to say that the people closest to me haven't, but, you know, it's good to see guys like you and others who have real no ties to me, like, care and reach out, because, you know, they're fathers too. Yeah. And so, you know, like, they try to put themselves in, like, your shoes. And so, I mean, It's comforting. It's comforting to know. I mean, and it's not so much for me. It's just like you want to know that, your son's legacy like lives on.
Yeah. No, I think that's you're on the right track with that. And like I said, I really support what you're doing, and I hope people can join the movement. And I hope that the Christian Strong Project can just become something huge, and because and we'll get to the that story right now, but what your son did that day even speaks more of like who his father was that was able to push down to him, because it sounded like the kid had like the service in him as well, and I think that is when I heard the story from you, I was like, it broke my heart, man. It really did. And to be honest with you, all week I've been racking my brain of like, man, how do I even talk to his dad about this story without like feeling uncomfortable myself, right? Yeah, and that's why I really wanted to get your story out, who you are, what you've done, and then I really want to, get Christian's story out there as well.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's hard to talk about him, but it's not like I want to talk about my son.
Yeah,
because again, I want his name and legacy to be out there, and if it can help someone, then that's what I want to do. But like going back to your point about people and their political opinions and stuff, I think a lot of Americans don't have the experience and to go out to other countries and see the world and see other parts of the country. So it's hard for them to have a different perspective. They have a one-sided perspective, and that's what they just see on TV, but they've never truly been there and seen Correct. It and stuff. And so, I mean, I try not to be political. I try not to, I do have strong opinions, but I try not to push them out there too much. My wife would probably say something different, but yeah, it's just, it's just having the opportunity to see things in a different light, to have a better perspective. I think that's what gives veterans and people who have traveled like that, a more opportunity to kind of speak on that and stuff. But yeah, I think, the world today is just crazy right now.
It's hard to keep up with, man. It's really
it's
just
so much.
I think for me, it's just the understanding and the knowing that what people like myself and you, when we signed those papers, shipped off to go do those things, just knowing like, were we doing it for the right reason? You know what I mean? And were we doing it for, not because we were put in a situation that was somewhat could be fabricated, right? Like there's just so much questions and so much concern there that I don't regret joining the military. I don't regret serving my nation. I don't. I'm proud to be a Marine. Like I still, like I say, I'm always going to be a Marine. Like I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the people I served with. I'm proud of all the friends that I've met, like from the Army, from, you see the guys we hang out with out in San Antonio, a lot of special operations guys and stuff. Like I'm proud of all that. I won't take any of that away. But sometimes I just question the motive behind of a lot of the things that had to be done in the many years that everybody was during GWAT, right? And I hope that that's where my faith comes in, right? Is that one day God understands that, majority of these guys, if this was a bad reason for us to be out there and doing those things, God would understand that what we were doing was just trying to serve our nation and serve each other and not go out there with malicious intent and stuff, right? If that was the case. But I mean, I get it. Like terrorism, like as much as people want to say like, well, it's probably because we started and stuff. Yeah, I get it. But at the same time too, they're trying to kill you as well too. So there's no doubt there that some of the things you had to do are not, wrong. But at the same time, it's like, okay, our leadership, right? Especially with our current situation where we see our leadership is so tampered with, right? And so it's hard. You can't even, you look at each side, you're just like, like Spider-Man meme where they're all pointing at each other. You're like, that's how I feel. You're like, well, what's going on here? Like, I don't even know. Like, I don't even know who to believe anymore, right? It's how jacked up it is. And I've gotten to a point in my life now where my goal is, one, to make sure, my peers and people around me are safe and my family, but I can care less about any of that other stuff anymore. Like, I've let it consume me a little bit too much, and I've recently realized that it's not healthy for me, and I have to kind of back off a little bit. And I would hope that, people can understand that, you and I might not have the same political beliefs or whatever it is, but it doesn't mean we have to hate each other. And I think that's the biggest problem we have in America today is a lot of people tend to take that stuff and run with it. And because you didn't vote for the same person I did or whatever, it's like now automatically we can't like each other. And that's not how it should be. We should be able to disagree with each other. Like it's kind of like in a marriage, right? If you can't disagree with one another and actually come up with a solution, it's not going to work. Yeah. And that's, I think, what I really try to push on the podcast too, right? It's like understanding that like it's okay if you don't like what I'm saying right now. Like doesn't mean I'm because me and you might get along just fine. You know, like you can come hang out with me and we can go on a long drive and we'll probably laugh and have a good time. And what I really want is like kind of trying to tell my mother is we shall stop. So what we need to stop doing is making our relationships based off of our political views and how we view the world, right? Like I get it. You don't want to go hang out with somebody that's completely opposite of you, but at the same time, like that doesn't take away still from like we need to stop characterizing ourselves based off of those things, right?
Yeah. Obsidian Spear Group, they just posted a post on Instagram that I saw when we were coming up here, and it was something about, you know, kind of like what you said, like, was it worth it? You know, why? And so for me, I feel like, I don't know. I mean, some days I feel like, yeah, it was worth it. And some days I feel like it's like it wasn't. And, you know, like would I want my children to join the military and go to war? I don't know. Like, I don't know if I would support that.
Yeah.
Right? Or even like law enforcement.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would support that, like, because I've seen like what it does to somebody, like physically, mentally, spiritually. Correct. And I just don't know. And like that's and it's weird because I'm proud of my service.
Yeah.
You know, I'm proud of what I did. I'm proud of what I'm doing. I love to serve the community and serve the country. But at the end of the day, yeah, like we ask ourselves, like, was it worth it?
But I think what it is you're a person that you genuinely, you excuse my language, but it sounds like you genuinely give a shit about people. And you've lived that kind of life where you truly in your heart probably just say, I don't regret doing that, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to see others have to go through that, right? Like it's something that I guess, and that's what I explain to some people that have never experienced the military and stuff like that. It's like, it's something that had to be done, but it's not something that you should wish for, right? Like it's not something you want to happen all the time, you know, going down roads and, you know, getting hit by IEDs or getting in firefights and stuff like that. That's not what you want. And that's where I want to kind of channel next to like law enforcement with you, because I know you have a law enforcement career as well, and I did as well. And I think it's a whole, they talk about the differences of law enforcement and military and stuff, and there is differences because it's a different arena. And I think for law enforcement, that's another place where I feel like mental health is not looked into like it should. You know, there's days where, and I said this on one of my old podcasts, I had a situation where I had to basically show up and help the county because they didn't have an SO unit nearby, and a 2-year-old child had just gotten ran over. And I had to deal with that call for multiple hours. And then after that, instantly I get called to some lady who her neighbor was too close to her driveway. And she was telling me I need to go tow the car. Like this is at 10 o'clock at night. She's telling me what I need to go do to her neighbor and the parking and stuff. And I actually got in trouble for it because I told the lady that I didn't have time for her bullshit. I was really irritated. I just saw a kid dead for multiple hours, you know. It's the first time me ever seeing a child dead. And I have to go deal with somebody that's angry because her car or, you know, her driveway's partially blocked, which she could still get in and out. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm a young guy still at the time, and I'm thinking like, that's your worries. But right now, a father and a mother just lost their son. And they're not worried about that stupid ass car that's in front of your driveway. And I know it wasn't her fault. She probably had no idea what had just happened or anything, but you know, I kind of gave her my 2 cents. And, but it's stuff like that. And in law enforcement, you deal with death, you deal with, you know, you're a counselor, you're everything in law enforcement. And I think we hold a lot of these guys to the highest level, but then when it comes to supporting them, I feel like we also lack that as well. And I told you this right before, I was in law enforcement at one point, and I can have both a negative and a positive view for law enforcement because I've lived that world, and especially with what happened to me. But, you know, I still also, like, you know, people go out there protesting and pissing these guys off and yelling in their faces and stuff like that. These are people too. They're not robots. You know what I mean? And eventually you're going to piss them off, and they can make mistakes. Just like a doctor can kill somebody, a law enforcement officer can make a mistake and kill somebody. Anybody can kill somebody, right? Like it's people's minds are not, like I tell people that I have somebody that I know closely who has really difficult mental health issues and very anxious and has issues and stuff. And I said, just like you snap and you have those issues because you can't handle pressure, do you think that every single officer is like fabricated to handle all that pressure? No. And they have to deal with it every day. And then their days off, they want to go have fun, do whatever it is. And then we see DUIs with law enforcement officers. And yes, I get it. Hold them to a higher standard. They're police officers. They shouldn't be doing that. And then the news will report the hell out of it. Like, you know, sheriff's officer from, you know, for example, Maricopa County gets caught for, you know, driving under the influence and whatnot. And they'll scrutinize the living hell out of the person. And then the guy who just hit a family head on, who was a civilian, drunk, they'll barely touch that story. But it's more clicks and more views when you're scrutinizing a police officer. But I don't see that same energy to say, hey, you know what? What was wrong with that officer? Why was he over there sticking to the bottle? I'm not saying all of them have that issue, right? Yeah. Some of them sure just being dumb and going out and making a mistake. But in law enforcement, and I'm sure you can agree with me here, how many times have you bottled things up and taken them home? A lot, you know? Yeah. And that stuff eventually, we're human beings. It comes out eventually. It might not come out in a way we want it to come out. And that's where, you know, I also thrive to have more law enforcement officers on this show and stuff so we can talk about those things, because there is officers out there that need that support. And that's where we get back to like Mighty Oaks. They have retreats and stuff and help for officers. And I feel like that's another arena that there's not been as much help for these guys, especially while they're still in. Because have you noticed this, even with military, we tend to worry about mental health and give them programs and stuff while they're out. No. And, you know, when I had Travis on here he used to be with the Green Beret Foundation and stuff, and then now he's got Project Recon. He's like, why don't we start working on them while they're in, while they're already having signs of these issues? Why don't we start working on that sooner? Maybe prolong some of these careers. Maybe, you know, get them out and not have to, you know, focus on them being put on high dose medication that's just kind of keeping them as zombies to keep them at ease and stuff. And then when they're done, they want to kill themselves. We lose too many veterans. We lose too many law enforcement officers to suicide. You know, my old department, I saw somebody posted recently. I didn't know who the guy was. It sounds like he was a newer officer. He's a young kid. He took his life. Like went home, just blasted himself. And it's just like, it's the pressure. It's the amount of stress that's put on these guys, and we don't take care of them. Your admin is willing to write you up and hang you to dry, but they're not willing to check on you. And I noticed it's very rare in this community, or in that community. I say that this community, I'm not in it anymore, but you know, even being with friends still, training up like in battleground stuff, talking to other officers and stuff, and you hear the story, and you know, you're just like, damn, like, you know, we don't take care of these guys either, but we judge the living shit out of them, you know?
I mean, there's so much around this issue that you could do a whole podcast. You can go do hours of what's wrong. And one, like I had a conversation with the lieutenant from my last department probably early last year before I left that department. And we had just had a firefighter from the neighboring department kill himself. And so I was on scene and we found him. And of course, some of the firefighters from that department were all looking for him. They knew that he was in crisis. They just didn't get there like in time, right? And so once that was over with, the city had everyone that was with that department and then us that actually were on scene go to a city building, and they had another crisis team from a different department come, and that was a mental health like unit. And so what they did was, when everybody was there, and now it isn't just the people that were on scene, it was city officials, the mayor, the city manager, it was all these extra like people, right? And basically you lined up behind a door, and you know, they called you in and you talked to a professional, and then they need to tell you if you're good or not right then and there. And I was just like, dude, no one's going to say anything in this environment. Yeah. This is completely pointless. And I told my sergeant, I was like, this is dumb. Like, no one who's actually struggling, while everyone's around here, while everyone's just trying to go home or go back to work, is going to say, hey, I have a problem. So kudos for doing this, but it's pointless.
It's the wrong approach.
Like, this
Good
is
initiative,
just
bad judgment.
This is just so y'all can say, hey, we tried something, right? But it doesn't take a genius to do something different. So there was that. But then going back to this, there was that incident, and then going when I was talking to this lieutenant, and we were talking about that, and I asked him, I was like, Texas, I think 2 years ago, just implemented that every department has to have a mental health unit, right? This was just 2 years ago. And I was talking, and I asked the lieutenant, I said, why did it take Texas, TICO, to mandate that for departments to start doing it? You would think if leadership and admin truly cared, that it wouldn't take a mandate to actually implement this stuff. But it did, and that's great. It's something, right? But I said, we have these officers that come in, and you're going to go through FTO first, right? And I had been with this department for almost 3 years. And I said, I don't even know who our chaplain is. And he said, well, yeah, it's chaplain like so-and-so. Like, the name is on the whiteboard, like, in the patrol room. And I was like, sir, you really think a new officer is going to, one, catch that?
Yeah.
And then
be
two,
like, let me go look at the board.
And then two, like, be like, oh, okay, hey. I said, why isn't the chaplain coming? Because you're not hiring thousands of officers. You're hiring ones and twosies. Why not during the first week of FTO does the chaplain not come and introduce himself and give him a card and say, hey, I'm your chaplain. If you ever need anything, here's my card. Reach out to me. And he was just like, well, that's a good idea. I'm like, come on, dude. Like, it's not, this isn't a genius idea. This guy was retired from Air Force.
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, you lived through, law enforcement today is doing what the military was trying to do in 2006, 7, and 8.
Correct.
With the mental health.
Yeah.
They're 20 years behind. You have 20 years of what the military tried to do to come up with a better idea because it didn't work in the military. And so y'all are just doing the same thing. And you really think it's going to work now? No. Officers are not going to come and say, hey, I need help, because they're not going to risk losing their badge and gun and their job to get help. They need to provide for their families. They need the paycheck. They need the benefits. They're not going to do it because they're not comfortable that their leadership will support them. They'll just say, oh my God, he's broken. Let's push him out. And whether that's true or not, that's what they're afraid of. And so going back to that conversation, the lieutenant said, well, would you believe this, that we had an officer that needed help come and they used it and they didn't lose their job? And I said, yeah, that's great. I would hope that that's how it worked, right? But I said, what was it though? Was it someone who's saying, hey, I'm just stressed, I need to talk to somebody? Or was it an officer saying, hey, I'm about to take my life? Those are two different things. The person that's just stressed and needs help, yeah, they need help, but they're not in crisis yet. The person that's going to take their life, that's the one that's not going to come to you. Correct. And so I said, why? And so we had just, so they had just implemented this program, right? I said, why hasn't the chiefs, because there's multiple chiefs for some reason, come into the patrol room and talk to the officers and say, hey, this is what we're doing now. This is the program. This is how it works. And let me talk about the myths. You're not going to lose your job. If you come to us and say you need help, this is what we'll do, and this is how we'll help you. So don't fear of losing your job because we're here to help. Why haven't they done that? And that lieutenant had no answer to it. And again, these aren't great ideas. This is common sense. Yeah. The military did it. No one in the military, soldiers, airmen, any branch was going to come forward because they didn't want to get kicked out. Yeah. It wasn't until military generals and higher ranking service members came forward and said, hey, I have problems. Yeah. So, now we're starting to see the change. So until we see that in law enforcement, officers aren't going to do that. I mean, they're getting stabbed to their back from the department day in and day out. So why would they trust that the department is going to have their back? And then you have stories where officers have lost their careers because they did try to seek help.
There's something that I say, and some people get it and some people don't, but I always say, as a law enforcement officer, not only are you watching your back on the streets, but you're watching it from your own. You're watching it from your own department, your own admin, because any move you make, they're willing to scrutinize you. And it happened after a lot of this DOJ investigations on departments and stuff like that. Especially when I was in New Mexico, they were investigating the living hell out of Albuquerque PD because of that homeless shooting that they had. And DOJ was there all the time. The protests were happening. You had that during the time with the Hands Up, Don't Shoot, movement when it happened up in I think it was St. Louis or whatever it was. I forgot the place where it happened, but
Ferguson.
Ferguson. That's right. Missouri, right? Something like that.
Well,
One of the places. Yeah. But yeah, the Ferguson shooting. And I was there during that. Well, I was in law enforcement during that time, and it was shitty, man, because, you show up to scenes and they'd be like, "Oh, you're gonna shoot me?" Like, let me put my hands up and stuff. And you're like, "Fuck!" Like that's not even me, man. Like I'm not even in that department. And, then you have your department where they're trying to please the public. And, for example, I got put on what's called a personal improvement plan, PIP. And that's because I tased 4 people in a week. Mind you, I was one of the few Hispanic, Spanish-speaking officers on my shift. So I got put in the Hispanic hood in that town, which was they called it Chihuahuita. It was a very, very bad area. I was dealing with gangbangers, at the time, that week, there was an issue between 2 different of the local gangs. I was busy, man. I didn't just go randomly tasing people in the street. Like, I was literally taking hot calls. I wasn't running traffic. I wasn't hanging out at the Walmart, greeting old people, any of that stuff. I was legit in the streets, in the alleys, in the middle of the dark, legit going after criminals. And every single one of them on paper was justified. They all got charged. There was never any, even IA complaints or anything. But the department says, you need to tone it down. I go, what do you want me to do? And then especially one of them, he actually came at me with a baseball bat, and I tased him. I go, so what am I supposed to do, get hit with a baseball bat so I don't end up on another PIP and get fired? Why don't you, as the chief who's willing to scrutinize the living hell out of us, get your ass off your chair and come outside and actually go patrol a night or 2 with us? Oh, I already did that years ago in Boston. Oh, okay, great. We'll do it again. Because maybe during your time, it's when you guys still had somewhat of law and order. You could beat the shit out of somebody, put them in cuffs, and nobody really scrutinized you. We're living in a whole different era for law enforcement. And currently where we're at right now, too, especially to see how ICE has been, ragdolled and used politically to basically go for their own movement. And I get that we have to go after illegal immigration and stuff. We do. I 100% agree. But I feel like ICE has been misused lately, especially when they were up in Minnesota. That was all a front to get, good old Tim Walz to make more mistakes than he already done, because we know how much of a piece of crap he is. But I'm like, a lot of those ICE agents, and I've been tracking this recently. In fact, one of them who got into a shooting actually in Minnesota just killed himself. And there's been 4 ICE agents that I've seen recently in the past 6 months that have killed themselves. And all of them have something in common. They've been in those hot areas where the protests are and everything. They're human beings, man. We're not taking care of these guys. We're over there, the world's greatest law enforcement agency, ICE, blah, blah, blah. We're hiring them like easy money right now. They're hiring ERO officers left and right just to put them in there so they could put the presence. But not once are they saying, you know what? Look what we're putting these guys through right now. Look what we're making them do, and then we're hope for them to be normal human beings right after it. Yeah. It's unfortunate, and leadership doesn't look into that. And like you said, right now they'll do some bull crap, event or whatever to basically check something off on a piece of paper, say that they did something, but really that's not the case. And as much as some of the leadership says, well, we've been there, we've done that, it's kind of like you and I can understand, especially in the military, right? There's always those one people that they kiss a little bit too much ass and they get into leadership a lot sooner than everybody else. And they didn't really get to be out there in the dirt with everybody else. And they don't understand what it's really like. And I hope that law enforcement can eventually clean itself up. I was really hoping that with this administration, when they had that plan with the FBI, that would clean up a lot of things, but it seems to still be the same. And it's sad because those are people like all of us here in this room right now who have families, have kids, have lives, and they're going through a lot. And, right now in this world, you shouldn't have to go to work. I mean, as it is, your job's already stressful as it is. You shouldn't have to go to work worrying about the people from the street wanting to kill you, the damn general public who's mad at you because the media is scrutinizing the living hell out of you. And then on top of that, your leadership. Like, you shouldn't have to worry. You think about it. How do you live life on edge that way forever? You're always on edge. And it's like, I've noticed it when I got out of law enforcement, when all that happened to me. And, I contracted for a little bit, but then I ended up going into a professional career I went to school for a couple of years, and I work in a professional career where for a moment there, whenever I saw like hesitation and stuff like that from leadership, I got very like, and they told me like, hey, you need to tone it down a little bit. Like, you're getting a little too like high strung about that. And I'm like, no, I just don't fucking trust people, and they're like, well, this isn't law enforcement anymore. And I had to realize like, okay, yeah, you're right. Like, this isn't, but I'm very huge on that. Whenever you try to jeopardize my career, I'm going to jump your neck right away, and it comes from that living that way, like,
I mean, like everyone knows the problems.
Yeah.
Like, the problems are there. Like, leadership knows about it. It's just a matter if you want to do anything about it.
Yeah,
it's like a relationship. Like, what your problems in your relationship is, but do you want to make the changes and do the stuff it takes to fix them? Early 2025, I went to a call where a 17-year-old had shot himself, and his entire family was home. Brothers, sisters, brother's girlfriend was home. They had just sat down, had dinner, just finished, went upstairs and killed himself. And after that call, and this was before they implemented the mental health team. So after that call, the officers that were on scene, there was nothing for them. So my sergeant and my corporal at the time, they made it a point to bring us in and ask us, like, how you doing? Do you need anything? And stuff like that. It wasn't for admin. They weren't mandated to do it. They did it, right? And so I'm pretty close with my sergeant now. And that night, we were standing outside and we were talking. And I said, well, who checks on you? And he said, I don't know. I said, why? Like, you think because you have those stripes on that you're immune to this? And to me, I feel like people that have been in the profession for a lot of years, they're actually more inclined to probably hurt themselves. And why I feel that way, and this is probably my experience from the military, when these young officers just get on the job, everything's fun to them.
Correct.
Everything's moving 100 miles an hour. Every experience is fun and exciting and
comes
new.
Later.
And what's crazy is like we say exciting, right? It's not going to a call where someone shoots himself is not exciting, but it's a new experience. This is the job that we signed up to do. They're not processing it.
They're not.
It isn't until years 10, 12, 13 that you really start processing everything that you've seen. So these sergeants and these corporals and lieutenants, these guys that have been on the job for some time, that's when they're starting to process. That's when I feel like it's really hitting them, because that's what it was for me coming out of the military. Like, it didn't hit me when I got out in 2017. It started hitting me after, when everything slowed down and I started processing it, And so I feel like, that right there was a moment that I was just like, like these departments don't care about you, And then fast forward to when the firefighter had committed suicide. Well, now we had the teams and the state had mandated it. Well, now we're doing something. But before that, there was nothing. And it's a crazy time. Like, these young officers don't know what trauma is going on inside their heads until it's too late. And that's the same with the military. Like, where, you're getting into firefights, you're getting hit, buddies getting hit and killed, or getting hit and flown out. You're back on the job, you're back to the next call, or on deployment, you just, Charlie Mike and continue mission. And your buddy's flying to Germany or flying to wherever, and you don't know if they live or died. And then if they do die, you don't even get to go to their funeral or their funeral because you're still deployed.
Yeah, you can't even.
So
go
things
give
are going
respect
things
to
are
the
going
family.
so fast that people forget that, and I think that's why you don't see a lot of intervention during those times, because everything's just going. And then that's where someone in leadership needs to stop and say, hey, we need to make sure we're doing things for our people now, because they have the time and the experience, and they should be like, you know what, I'm being affected, and I've been a cop for 20 plus years. These young officers are probably getting affected, or they will be. Yep. So someone up top needs to stop and say, hey, we need to do something now. And I just don't think that's happening. Maybe it's getting better. Like, I hope it gets better. You know, I'm not saying that, you know, every department, every leader is bad, because that's not true. I know some great leaders, but I mean, there are gaps where that it needs to be bridged. And unfortunately, you know, there's leaders that don't have the experience that truly understand that. And I think that's where veterans in law enforcement kind of can help with that. That, hey, you know, we've been to combat, we know what trauma does, and we can help you build this program or build a plan around for the department. But unfortunately, you know, if you're a young officer, they don't care about your experience. You know, you can be a retired veteran, did 20 years, retired as an E9, and to them, you're just a day one officer. You're like an 18-year-old kid. And I think that type of mentality also hurts the profession. Like, they're not using what skill sets that these officers, especially these older ones that want to come in and serve the community and bring unique skill sets from all their time. You know, these guys have more experience than most of these veteran officers.
100%, man. And I think that's where I feel like, for example, your movement right now of what you're pushing and what you're doing is huge, because you've been in all these arenas, and you've been in the most recent one that's been very difficult, especially for you. And it's better to hear these things from somebody like you who has lived them, because I'm sure you can agree with me here, especially this is the reason why I never wanted to go to the VA after I got out of the military. So I'm like, I don't want to fucking hear something from some doctor who has had a pretty decent life and never experienced. Like, what do you fucking know how I feel, right? What do you know, you know? And I can't tell you that, because you've lived every single one of those things, and you've lost something very special in your life. So hearing it from you is almost like humbling and an eye-opener. And I think that that's where I feel like our next mission is, as veterans, prior law enforcement, whatever. Our next mission is, we got to keep working hard to save guys like us and save friends who have taken their lives, save the future from hurting themselves, and creating a different mindset of, because I'm pretty sure you're just as guilty as I am. As a man, you do not want to open up to things. You feel like, I'm not, excuse my language, I'm no bitch. I'm not going to sit here and tell you something's wrong with me. You just gut it up. And that takes tolls on your relationships. That takes tolls on your family, your friends. People are like, man, he's an asshole, or he's mad. That's probably not who you really are, but you've gutted up so much. You know, like one time, I like sitting in a restaurant where I'm in a position where I can see everybody. I don't like to give my back to a lot of people and stuff. And one time our friend was like, hey, you know, like, why do you do that? And I was like, looked at him like, I'm sorry that I'm not fucking sitting there without lacking awareness like you are. That was not the answer that he needed, right? I shouldn't have been that way either with him. And in my mind, I was just like, he doesn't understand. He's just fucking idiot that just, you know. And I'm like, afterwards, I think about it, I was like, man, that's stupid of me. I shouldn't have done that. Should have explained to him a little bit better of, hey, you know, it's just the things I've done in my life, the things I've seen, I'm very cautious on giving my back to other people. But we have this, you know, macho mentality of where, you know, we're strong, nothing phases us. And I think that's where we need to, it hits different when another guy at the magnitude of like yourself, Sean, you know, all these other guys that, you know, we mutually know can sit down and actually humble up and say, you know what? It's okay to open up. It's okay to say something's wrong with you. It's okay to seek some help. And I think we need to make that the culture now, because I'm tired of seeing people die. I'm tired of seeing people like, man, he took his life, especially when you see the magnitude of the things that these people have done. I mean, I've seen now in the corporate world, right, and being now with management and stuff in my current position, me and my boss, we're rocking it, man. And we both have one thing in common: law enforcement and military. I see that there's so much potential for guys that were in the military that had leadership there and everything. If you could lead men into war, I'm pretty sure you could lead some people into a corporate business, right? And because bullets aren't flying at you. It might be like, you know, a lot of other stuff, but, you know, there's no bullets flying at you. And I think these people can do really good and big things out there. We just need to start helping our brothers and our sisters get stronger and go out there and be able to clean up that mind. That mind's messed up. That mind's deep. It's dirty. It's going through pain. And we all go through that. You know, I've gone through it. I've gone through it recently. Like, it's okay to decompress. And we need to make decompression normal and not make it seem like it's some kind of thing that's frowned upon. I mean, how much, I'm sure this was like this in the Army when you were in, but there was no such thing as even going to sick call. Like, you're sick, like, oh yeah, pussy, you better not go to the doc or whatever, right? And then we're over here telling the VA what's wrong with us, and they're like, well, you have no records of it. And you're like, well, you know, it did happen, you know? Yeah. And they're like, well, shit, you should have gone to the doctor. And you're like, well, sorry, but in my generation, that wasn't a thing, you know?
When I got into civilian world, when I was sick, it was legitimately, and then what's funny is it was weird to me because I was like, what do I do? I can just call in and say I'm sick.
This episode of Calling Your Shot is fueled by Echelon Energy Drink, the mission-ready performance drink developed with input from over 2,000 U.S. military service members. Echelon isn't just your average energy drink. It's a pre-workout in a can, packed with 300 milligrams of caffeine, 200 milligrams of L-theanine, beta-alanine, and fiber, formulated for clean, focused energy without the crash. Flavors like Mango Reaper, Yuzu Cayenne, and Berry Habanero are anything but ordinary. Each can delivers bold taste and a long-lasting performance, designed for those who don't back down from a challenge and a little spice. But Echelon's impact goes beyond the can. Their unapologetically military forward branding and real-world product testing build morale and pride within the armed forces. It's not just fuel. It's a reminder of who you are and what you stand for. Check them out at drinkechelon.com. Again, drinkechelon.com, and see why Echelon is the official energy drink of the United States military and now this podcast. Echelon Energy, mission-ready fuel for those who dare. This episode of Calling Your Shot is brought to you by Zemo Pouches, a bold, tobacco-free nicotine pouch that delivers flavor, comfort, and independence from big tobacco. Crafted with a unique water-free, semi-dry formula, Zemo pouches offer a steady release of nicotine and long-lasting taste. Made with soft, non-woven cotton imported from the UK, these slim pouches are gentle on the gums and built for all-day comfort. Zemo doesn't cut corners when it comes to flavor. Whether it's blueberry, grape, or wintergreen, every pouch packs a punch, thanks to high-quality ingredients sourced from their top-tier UK suppliers. Plus, each pouch uses pharmaceutical-grade nicotine, so you know you're getting premium quality with every pull. Zemo is proudly independent, no corporate giants, just a mission to give you a smarter, better option. Explore all of their flavors and strengths at ZemoPouches.com. Again, ZemoPouches.com. Zemo Pouches, flavorful, comfortable, and independent.
And like not work that day. I don't have to go to sick call and actually get up, go to sick call.
And hope that you can go to sick call.
And hope I get a profile for like I'm that day. Like some of those things, yeah, was weird to me. But going back to what you said about, the decompression and stuff, it's weird because when I'm on the job policing, I'm very calm. I don't get high strung. I don't yell. I don't cuss. I'm very controlled on scene. And I've always been that way, even on deployments. I can have people yelling at me, cussing at me, saying awful things to me, and I'm perfectly fine. But then I go home, and my wife says something, and I get upset. Or my daughter does something, my son does something, and I immediately get upset. And so people during conversation will say that about me and be like, oh yeah, this time, and my wife's like, where is that person? Like, why can't you do that at home? And it's like, I don't know, maybe because I have to do that on the job, and then it builds up, and that tipping point is when I go home, and so that's not fair to them,
yeah,
right? That's not fair for my kids or my wife to get the ugly side of me, while people on the streets who don't care about me
get the better side,
right? And so I think that's where we have to find ways to decompress and talk to somebody and just figure out ways to where we can relieve that tension so we can go home and be like better fathers. And that's something where church and my faith, just coming back to it, is has helped me. You know, I'm definitely not perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely in the beginning stages of coming back to my faith, and I definitely have my times where I'm still an ugly person, and I
Yeah.
still have the resemblance of what I used to be. But you know, I can't change like overnight.
Yeah.
It's a process, but it's a process that I'm trying to do, and I find that I am slowly moving in the right direction. But I think, but going back, I think a lot of officers, you know, that's a lot of problem, and even like soldiers, you know, that's why divorce rate is so high, like domestic violence and suicide and like just all that is because you know we have to be one like person at this job and then go home and be another, and it's just really hard to like do that and balance that and then be good at both, right? And so
I've asked myself that before, like, why can I be more, like, even in my current job, it can get pretty stressful. And, you know, with what I do now, you make a mistake and the person dies, right? I work in healthcare now, and I work in an arena where we're doing something very important that you make one mistake, that patient will die. And it's at that level, right? And people tell me, man, is it the military or something in you? Because every time something bad's happening, you're quiet, you do your job, like you're not freaking out like everybody in the room. There's been times where I tell everybody, I need everybody to shut up right now. Like, y'all need to calm down. You're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, I'm doing this, and this is what we're gonna do, okay? Focus, like just settle down. All the extra yelling and stuff's not necessary. And then I go home, and my two kids, those girls love to fight with each other, like every day. Like, they will, like, if you didn't know that they were related, you'd think they hate each other. And then they go to the park, and someone starts beef with them, and nobody's allowed to bully them, but they could bully each other, right?
Yeah.
And it drives me nuts because we'll be in the car, and they'll be playing just fine, and they start fighting over something so stupid, and then I lose my cool and my temper. I'm like, hey, cut your shit. Like, you know, enough, man. Like, why are you guys fighting with each other? And I'm a little bit too hard on them. They're my girls, you know, and my girls know they're daddy's girls. They know they can come to dad, and, you know, I got their back 100%, and I support them in everything they do. And they know they're spoiled by me too. But it's the few moments that I freaking freak out like that piss me off, because afterwards I'm like, man, I can go to work and not freak out on people like that. And like you said, you know, getting yelled at and stuff like that, and you're fine. And then over here, my kids are fighting. And instead of trying to explain to them why I need them to stop fighting and everything, kind of like I've done to people on the streets, right? I'm over here just yelling at them. And I'm like, that's not fair to them. They don't deserve that side of me. And you're right. It's a slow process. For me, where I've been getting recently is my faith is, I feel stronger than when it was when I was actually going to a church. Yeah. That's because I'm trying to find my relationship with God, right? And one thing I've asked was for my children to get close with God. And now it's pretty neat to see both of my girls seeking God on their own, right? Just randomly telling me things about God and watching YouTube videos and stuff. And we were at the bookstore not too long ago, and my 8-year-old's like, Dad, can you buy me my Bible? I was like, sure. So she has a little Bible. She'll read it and stuff. And that for me is an eye-opener, because I'm like, man, look at that. They're on the right path. I need to keep them on that path. I need to show them that they got a man in their life to look up to, right? And you're right, man. It's a slow process, but I think that's where we all, you know, just like we looked out for each other at one point in our life on the streets, in deployments, whatever it is, we need to keep doing that back home, right? We need to, you know, for all I know, we can go be eating dinner right now, and you know, you snap at your wife or something. Maybe later on I could say, hey, man, you good, man? Like, hey, that was a little bit too far. She didn't seem to do anything wrong to you, but are you all right? What's the problem? Like, what's eating you, brother? Like, what's going on? I think we need to be more accountable in that way. Just like we're being accountable, like, hey, did you get to the gym? Did you do these things? It's also be accountable on our mental health. And what better than another man that has lived a life like you to come out and say, hey, what's going on, brother? Like, what do you need? Like, and I know we can't do everything for everyone, right? We can't do everything, but we need to open up those options. And I think that's where, you know, not trying to get away from that subject, but that's why I really wanted to also, you know, talk about Christian, because I feel like the level of work that you're doing through such a tragedy that has happened is remarkable, because you've turned it into something special. And, you know, I know you're wanting to push everything to make Christian's legacy grow and everything, but a lot of this also is you doing it. And I know Christian's watching over you and guiding you in these things and making sure that you live his legacy, but he's also pushing you to be a better man. And the things that you're doing out there and pushing for, it's huge, man. Like I say, when I watch your stories and stuff, I'm like, I don't know how he does it. Like it'd be so hard for me. I can't imagine that. And I think that that's something I want more people to hear, because like I said, I have nothing but respect for you for doing that. And like, when it first happened, I would, reach out. I wouldn't try to hit you up too much. Just enough to, because sometimes I'm like, well, what if he's having a good day today? And then here I come with a text message. Hey, how are you feeling? And then you're like, wow, way to remind me, buddy. So I was very cautious on that too. But yeah, man, I would love to share Christian's story as much as possible, without going into details that you wouldn't want to give. But
yeah, just before we start that, man, having daughters is wonderful, right?
it is.
Like,
they change you.
so I had Christian, he was my boy, and after I had him, I had no plans of having another child. Like, he was it. I had my son, I was good to go, and then me and my wife, we got together kind of later in life. I transitioned out of the military, and she was kind of good with that too. She loves to travel, and we were doing a lot of that. And so she, I guess, really didn't have plans of having children herself. And I was like, nah, like, you need a child of your own. So, she got pregnant, and the entire time I was like, it's going to be a boy. I only make boys, right?
Yeah. You're like,
I only wanted a boy, So I went from, I don't know how I can love another child as much as I love my son. I really didn't want to. I wanted all my love to be with one child, but then it was like, well, I want just a boy. I just want boys. But then I had my daughter, and man, that changed. Like, I tell all my friends now that don't have daughters that they need to have a daughter. Like, it would definitely change you. Like, raising a son and raising a daughter are completely different. I think it calms you. It definitely brings out a softer side of you.
I was going to say, I joke around not till this day. I'm like, having daughters turned me into a softie to an extent. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you won't understand until you have one. Like, when you have boys and I have a son and everything, you're like, okay, like hard charging, and eventually they're going to be men and they can handle themselves and everything. But when you have a girl, especially if you're a man with good intentions and good faith and you care about people, that's now your life, and you got to take care of her, and you got to make sure you give her what she needs. But at the same time, like, there's nothing better than your daughter loving you and coming to you and looking at you as like, you're the man in my life and I need things from you, and they look up to you. It's humbling, man. Being a girl dad is phenomenal. I love it. Having my daughters, it's, don't get me wrong. Too many girls in the house sometimes can be like, oh my goodness, I need to go hang out with the boys for a couple of days or something. Yeah. But like you said, it's special, man. It does bring out a different person in you.
Yeah, it does. And going back to the parenting aspect, I had Christian when I was in my 20s. He was 14 years old. Yeah. My daughter was 5. So there's a big gap in there. Mm-hmm. And so, Christian got the dad that was like growing up as well. So, first child, still learning how to be a parent, going on deployments, being gone. Mia's definitely getting what I feel the better dad.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it just takes experience. And now that we're older, I'm not as, high strung. I'm still not there. I'm still not where I want to be. But I'm definitely more patient with her, and more patient person than I was in my 20s. I still yell at times, but definitely not what I used to yell with Christian. So she's getting to see a better part of me.
That's good.
And so
that's
was
amazing.
Yeah. So Christian. I need a second.
It's okay.
I get prepared to talk about it. cry.
No, you're okay, man.
Talk about how he loved Mia.
What's that?
Talk about how he loved Mia. Mia loved him.
Yeah, no, it's gotta be. I won't cry talking about him, but it hits me at first. Okay. So, yeah, so Christian was born in May of 2011. I was deployed to Afghanistan. At the time, I had a couple buddies who were trying to make it home, like for the births of their children. And during those times, they weren't going to extend your R&R. So a couple of them I saw where, you know, their child was born a day or two before they had to come back. And that was it. They got like 2 days with them. So I decided to wait and go home when Christian was born. So I got to, and this was back in the Skype days when Skype was new and
Yeah,
big.
good old
And,
Skype.
and in Iraq, we didn't have computers and technology and stuff. Like, you know, we had to call. I remember my first calls were from the sat phone
Yeah.
that the commander had. So after a couple months, like he started slowly letting platoons call home and use the sat phone. So Afghanistan was a little different. It was still remote, but technology was better. So I was able to Skype and watch it, and like I'm watching Be Born on Skype. And so that was pretty cool. It was a rough time on that deployment. We were getting hit all the time. Complex attacks, IEDs. They would attack our base, Kopbach. And so I'd be on Skype with his mom, and we'd get attacked. So I'd run out, go to the bunkers, or go to the wall, like do whatever we had to do. And Christian's mom would just be sitting there like listening to firefights
Which
and
is tough, too.
explosions. Oh yeah, and like she's pregnant, but then so the night that Christian was born, I had everything set up. I was gonna watch him be born. Then I'd be picked up from a helicopter, flown out to Bagram or to Salerno, and then I'd get on a plane to go to Bagram, then to go home. And so I remember I was been on Skype for hours, and at like 2 a.m. the computers like reset themselves. So I remember my platoon had just come in from a patrol. So I was talking to my platoon sergeant, using that like reboot as like a way to go stretch my legs and like kind of just get away from the screen. And we got into a conversation that took a little bit longer than I expected. And I was like, okay, man, I gotta go. Like, dang, it's like been like an hour. I go back, and when we go back on Skype, she's starting to push. So like Christian was coming quick, and so I was like, damn, I almost missed it. But I got to watch him be born on Skype, and like that was great. And that next day, they started like scheduling me to come home. And so, like I said, it was before, he was around my 6-month mark of my 12 months when Christian was born. So before that, there was a lot of stress. I just wanted to meet my son, right? And so I wanted to make it home to meet him. And our company commander at the time, he was, I don't know if he was scared or what, but he wasn't a great commander. We'd get hit, and instead of shooting 120s back at the enemy, he would shoot on loom rounds to kind of scare him, right? And so what was happening is they had this little hill called Black Rock.
Yeah.
And so what the enemy would do is they would attack us from the middle of Kalats. So they would use the citizens, the civilians, as like their concealment, because they knew that Americans wouldn't attack and kill innocent people. So because of that, we were just shooting loom rounds as like a show of force.
Yeah.
And so a lot of us were kind of disgruntled and stuff. We weren't doing any type of decisive like operations to really go and stop that.
Yeah.
And they were attacking us.
Kind of just being reactive at that point.
Yeah, and we were all frustrated. We didn't understand why. Even our XO was frustrated. And I remember the company commander had gone home on R&R or something like that, so the XO was in charge, and they hit us one day, and we just went off. The XO allowed 120s to go off, and we just went haywire on Black Rock.
But it slowed down a little bit after that, huh?
It slowed down, and morale was high.
Yeah.
He wound up getting in trouble for that. The company commander didn't like that, but man, it boosted the morale like big time. So, so back to, I was transitioning back, again, I was very stressed. I just needed to get home to see Christian. And I go back to Salerno, and right next to the airport is like little temporary building where you would sleep and stuff and wait for your plane to go to Bagram. And me and a couple of soldiers, I was at E6 at the time, and we were laying there, and we just hear this loud explosion. The doors blow open, smoke is like everywhere. A rocket just hit the compound, and so we run outside, and the dust settles, and this captain. So the medical battalion was right outside these buildings, and the hospital was right next to us. And this captain was on the phone with his family and got hit. And so all it was just his torso, and then just chunks of meat like everywhere. It actually hit between a couple like hard structural buildings. And I remember, so I'm telling a soldier, hey, like go get a blanket so we can cover him up. The medical people were coming out, and then they started putting two and two together and realized like who it was, and it was one of their guys. And so they're starting to break down and how that plays out and stuff. And I remember I was like, man, dude, just get me the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Like Salerno's known, I think they call it like Rocket City or something like that. So it gets mortared a lot, which is not a huge deal for us, right? We just go to the bunkers, sirens will go off, and you get to a point where you like don't even care anymore. But but at that time it hit him, and I was like, dude, just get me out of here. I remember I went to go talk to the chaplain because I knew him, and he was a cool guy, and I wasn't very spiritual back then and stuff, but just needed someone to talk to. Yeah. And so long story short, I get home. Christian was born in Del Rio, so his mom is still there. Her parents still live there, so I get home and we drive down there and I meet my son. So I spent a whole 2 weeks with Christian.
Yeah.
And it was great, and did that 2 weeks and then had to go back for 6 more months. And but that last 6 months was a lot easier, Yeah. I was just like, you know what? I met my son. If God wants to take me, go ahead, I met him. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
And so, that first 6 months was horrible. Last 6 months was a lot better.
Good reset. Decent little reset to get you back on. All right. And it's also something to look forward to get back to home,
Oh, 100%.
So, I think that's also something for like people who are listening is like, especially in the civilian world, you have a child and, I'm going on paternity leave or whatever. It's not how it works in the military, I mean, you literally watch your son born on a computer screen, and then had to see somebody get killed right before going to go see your son. And then 2 weeks later, it's like, all right, you're back at it. Let's go. And, that goes back to everything that I feel why your story is huge, because look at the things, the sacrifices you've had to pay, in your life, and to see you still wanting to give and help afterwards just shows the kind of person you are.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unique. Every service, member that has served at any point in time has made those sacrifices. Yep. I mean, that's just part of the job. If you're gonna be in the military, you're gonna miss things.
Correct.
And so, it's not unique, but we all have our stories and stuff, but when I redeployed and met him, 6 months, I had missed the first 6 months, and so I didn't know kind of what that 6 month looked like. So when I had my daughter, that first 6 months was kind of new to me. Yeah, I didn't know what that looked like other than the 2 weeks. But I'd eventually got out. So me and his mom had got divorced. I had gone to Fort Hood. We had separated. I was in Kentucky before that, and that's who I deployed with 126 to Afghanistan, first ID. And we had separated, and she moved back down to Texas. And so I wanted to be closer to Christian, so I went to Fort Hood and became an instructor there at a WLC. I think it was probably PLDC, then WLC, and now it's something else. But that allowed me to be close, and we tried to work on our marriage, but ultimately it didn't work out, and we got divorced. So once we got divorced, I knew that I was going to get out. I didn't want to leave Christian. I wanted to be close to him. Yeah. I was at Fort Hood, but I knew eventually I would have to leave. And so I was able to go to First Cav after my time as an instructor. So it kind of kept me there at Fort Hood. And then once I got out, then I was able to be close to him. He was in San Antonio. I moved back down to San Antonio. And so that's how, ultimately, that was my goal. And so I did about 13 years and then got out. And it was all because I wanted to be with Christian and be close to him.
So what was it like, raising Christian growing up? I mean, you're coming out of a whole culture shock. You're now coming from the military, deployments, now raising a kid. You're probably still young yourself, You're still, kind of grasping on a life, and then obviously a divorce and everything. Like, what was it like?
It was good. I mean, I was younger, so sleeping and stuff was easier when you're not getting a lot of sleep. But, Christian's mom, she did a lot, just like Mia's mom, my daughter now. They do a lot. But it was cool, man. I had my son, and the older he got, the more we got to do with him and stuff like that. And I remember his mom would work a lot on the weekends, so a lot of times it would just be me and him. And so we'd go hit up restaurants and watch the football games. I was really big in college football back then. This was back when UT was still kind of good and stuff. Yeah. And before they had their years, the kind of down years. And so we would hang out and I just loved it. I knew my son's name in high school. For some reason, I don't know exactly when or why, but I knew that Christian Allen would be my son's name, and that was in high school. And fast forward to, a decade later, that's what his name was. And so once we got divorced, she moved back to San Antonio, and it was good. I mean, we had a good co-parent relationship. I would come down a lot. I would see him as much as I could. I didn't have to really, we followed the visitation guidelines, but I could see him like whenever I wanted. Yeah. So we did a lot. We were close. My parents, her parents, family, we're all close. So Christian had a good life. We had a lot of help watching him and stuff like that. So I mean, being a dad, but again, something I still struggle with, and I'm sure most people struggle with, is the balance between work and home life.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'm one of those guys that I pour myself into my professional life. I did it with military. I did it with sports. That was, I had a great work ethic to be the best I could. I'm growing up for sports. I did that for the military. I tried to be the best I could then. I got into law enforcement, and I tried to do the same thing. And so when you pour yourself into one area of your life, it's going to hinder the rest. And so, that was our issue with Christian's mom. It's the same issues that I still have, I think I'm trying to find a better balance with life, but at that time, that was big for me, is that everything was about my profession and being the best and more neglecting the family life.
I think, from hearing Christian's story of what happened and everything, I think, your son was really, I'm sure he saw everything you did. As his father, he saw, the service you've had given and everything. And just to hear the story of what he did that day, it just shows the kind of little guy you were raising. He was already on the right track. He was, that sense of service was there in him as well. Because I don't see many kids his age being able to do what he did right before all that happened. And I think that's what, when it first happened and I heard the story, I was crushed, because I was like, man, why did that have to happen to him,
Yeah. Christian did have his issues, so.
As we all do, man.
I haven't told the whole story just because. So Christian for years was having some issues at school. He wasn't the biggest wanting to do his work and stuff like that. So, he wasn't passing classes. He was getting into just petty trouble at school, nothing criminal, but just petty stuff. And when he was with me, he was great for the most part, like every kid, every son. But it got to the point to where he was kind of going down the wrong path. And the older he got, the worse it was going to get. So we had made a decision, or we had found out about this program that was up in the hill, up by Lakey, and it was a Christian-based program. You could send your child there. They go to school on this ranch. They have programs to help him and stuff like that. It's a beautiful place. The river was right there. They had horses, and it was just somewhere where kids can go. A lot of them were like foster kids or kids from like broken homes would go there too, but you could actually send your child there. And so when we had found that place, I was initially like, no, he's not going to go. You know, I didn't get out of the military to be away from him. But, you know, it got to the point where we needed to do something. You know, I didn't want him to cross the line between petty, dumb kid stuff to criminal stuff.
Yeah, correct.
And as police officers, we see that. Like, you know, like Christian's mom, Brittany and Letty, they'd be like, you know, like, Christian's bad. I'm like, dude, he's not that bad.
Yeah.
I deal with 13-year-olds that are still in cars that have guns and that are going out and shooting guns and stuff. I go, those are bad kids. Christian is just being, you know, like a dumb, like, teenager.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. And so, but I didn't want him to start going down that path.
To eventually lead there, yeah.
Because it just, you know, in public school is crazy right now.
Yeah.
And it just takes one person to influence your child, and they're going down the wrong path. And Christian was shorter. He was a smaller kid. So, you know, he would be bullied for his size. And he was very conscious about that. And that, like, affected him. You know, he didn't have a lot of confidence, even though he was a very handsome kid. He was good in sports. Girls liked him.
He's doing jiu-jitsu and stuff.
Yeah, he did jiu-jitsu, like, with me. But he was just always, you know, he was always compensating because of that. And always felt like, you know, I'm too small. So, you know, like people do, you know, he had to always kind of do extra to try to compensate for that. And for years, I would try to tell him, man, like, bro, like, it doesn't matter your size. Like, look at Messi and look at Atove. Like, look at all these athletes who are small that are doing great things, that are beasts in their sports. Has nothing to do with the size. But, you know, like, as a child, you know, that's hard.
It's hard to think about
being bullied and stuff like that. So he was going through some of his own, like, personal things, and I think that's why he kind of tried to be the class clown, right? He wanted people to like him and stuff like that. So we eventually felt that it was time to maybe try to do, like, something else. So we looked at this program again, and we actually took a tour of the program. My wife had done some research and would sit down and show, like, I'm Christian, hey, like, this is what they have and all this stuff. And Christian was very, like, interested, like, in it. And so we went down there, he saw it, we walked around, and he wanted to come, and he wanted to go. Like, you know, like, he had told us, like, you know, like, I want to change, you know, but he just didn't know how, or he just couldn't in this environment. And, you know, he doesn't come from a broken home other than divorce. You know, we have good lives. His mom has a good life, good school districts. You know, it's just, you know, the outside influences were, like, taking control of him. Yeah. And we saw it, but, I mean, what can we do? You know, like, we could homeschool him, but that's hard to do. You know, like, we all have careers. You know, we all want to pursue our careers. And, I mean, it's hard to live on one income. Yep. So, you know, who's going to sacrifice their career to do it?
Correct.
And so we decided to put him in this program, and we put him in. So we dropped him off in May of 2025, and that's where he stayed until October, like, 31st with his accident. But so again, it was a beautiful ranch out in it was actually probably 10 miles north of Hunt, where the floods were. Correct. So last year on July 4th, we had gone to my friend's house in Nashville for the weekend, and I remember my dad was, like, blowing up my phone, calling, dude, like, what, like, what's up? And the floods had happened. Yeah. And he's like, dude, like, have you seen the news? The floods, like, is Christian okay? And so I called him. I called the ranch. I called him. I'm like, hey, y'all, like, are y'all okay? He said, yeah, like, we're good. They were higher up in elevation. Yeah. So they didn't get a lot of flooding. They got some, but not a lot. Not like that. But they were close to Hunt. And so at that point, it was weird. So I mean, as cops, we know the real world. Like, we don't live in fantasy land. Like, we know danger. Like, we've seen it. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I don't trust people with my kids. I know that's why, you know, I always carry my gun. That's why we're always doing things, because we know that stuff happens, like, all the time. And so that was a big thing for me, allowing him to go into this program, because someone else was going to be responsible like for my child.
Yeah.
And that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, it is.
And then you look at these floods, and you look at these camp employees, and not because they had ill intentions, they just weren't trained.
Yeah,
Or they didn't know what to do. Like they don't have the mindset, and those kids died. And that, man, that hit me hard. And I did go down there for 2 days, and my father-in-law did, and we did what we could to help and stuff, and we walked those grounds of those resorts and stuff, and
Yeah, it was tough, man. Being there also, it was tough to see all that.
it was a lot, yeah. But man, that really scared me because my son was, one, close to that area, but two, like you see the reality of when someone else is in control of your child, like his well-being. Yeah. And so, from that point on, it was just weird. Like I never really fully accepted him being gone into this program. It was, it was just something new. Yeah. I couldn't just go 20 miles like down the road and go see him whenever. This was 2-hour drive. So now they were planning trips, and it was just a different time and aspect in parenting, and I wasn't fully used to it yet.
Yeah.
And so, but when Christian first got to the ranch, so what happens is they live in houses. So they have several, let's say 5 or 6 homes on this ranch. And within that home, they have these what's called house parents. So trained adults that are married, and a lot of them have kids themselves. They're trained to be a part of this program, and kids will live in that house. And so I think he lived in a house of like 5 or 6 other boys around him his age, and he had house parents. And so that's what they did, they like day to day. And so they had a couple houses with, like a gender and age groups and stuff like that. So that's how that ranch and that program was structured. But again, it was beautiful. They had horses, they had animals. The grounds are beautiful. It was right there off the Frio, so his backyard was the river.
Oh wow!
And yeah, it was a beautiful place. And when Christian first got there, he had some issues, like every kid. And we were working with the first house parents closely and talking to them. And Lynn, the house dad, him and Christian became like a really close. And Lynn was younger, I think, early 30s, so more of our age. And they were very supportive, and we communicated big time with Lynn and his wife, because even though Christian was gone, we still didn't want to just not be involved.
Correct.
Like there are a lot of kids up there where their parents don't even call.
Yeah.
Like they don't care, and like Lynn would tell us, like, man, like we have parents that we have to actually call and tell them, hey, like you need to come and get your child at least for a weekend, and we weren't like that. We were probably communicating like too much.
Yeah.
But we wanted to be involved. Like we didn't want to
me
just,
as a support system as well.
yeah. And so the whole point of this ranch was to help him succeed in life, and we want to be a part of that. So what do we need to do to help this program out to help reach the goal? And so that's how we felt. And so we're always like, a big part of that. And so we dropped him off in May. He finished 8th grade there at the school. So there's a small little 6-man football type school on the ranch. I think the graduating class was like 13 people. So very small, but it was on the grounds. And so he went through the summer. He had a good summer. It took some time to get used to the transition and stuff like that. But again, Lynn and his house parents were really good with him and took time and stuff like that. When we started the school year, so his freshman year, high school, he had never played school sports because he never passed. He always wanted to. He was great in basketball. He was a good athlete. He loved sports. He just wouldn't pass his classes, so he could never play. And so he started his freshman year, and it started off a little rocky. He had some issues the first month of school, but it slowly changed. Yeah. And so this is kind of where it gets into what happened. So I didn't grow up fishing. My dad and my dad and his dad, they grew up in Corpus, so they grew up on fishing, but I never really took to it. And Christian started fishing, and he started fishing like every day, and he was catching like good sized bass, catfish. He learned to love fishing, and he had fished a little bit throughout his life, like with me and Letty and stuff like that. So he had some experience and exposure, but he really took to it on this ranch. And so when that started happening, like September timeframe, end of August, into September, into October of last year, we could really start seeing a change. He started fishing, his grades were getting better. He started passing, his behavior was improving. So because he was passing, he could play sports. So he was on the football team. And, you know, we were so excited and so happy for him because this is what he had always wanted. And he always wanted to play sports and be on a team. And, you know, us growing up in sports, like we know that the importance of what sports do for children and how it can mold you into the man that you'll be like later on in life. So, I mean, everything was going great. Everything that we had hoped that the ranch would do, it was doing, and it was happening. Christian was happy. He was coming back into his faith. He was passing his classes. He was playing football. He was just enjoying his time there. And I remember October 18th. So he had one football game in San Antonio, and it was October like 17th. So we all went to it, and we watched him play. Well, then the next day, me and my daughter had gone up there, and we just fished with him like all day. And so my daughter at the time had just turned 5, and she loved it. She loved to fish, and Christian. And I was letting Christian show her like how to fish, and I was just letting him take the lead. And I was just kind of just sitting back, just watching it, just enjoying my time with like I'm with them. And at that point in time, like, dude, like, I didn't want Christian to be at the ranch anymore. Like, I didn't want him to be
You're
gone
ready to get
anymore.
him back home.
Yeah, like, but you know, I couldn't be selfish. It was good for him, but as a father, like, I hated it. And I remember we were driving on the ranch, and I asked him, I was like, hey man, like, do you want to come home? And he said, no, I love it here. Because I was like, if he says yes, I'm going to bring him home. Like, I was just done with it, you know? But he said, no, I love it here. And so, you know, a part of me was like, man, you know, it hurt. But at least we weren't doing something that he didn't enjoy.
Yeah, he was seeing the positive out of it.
Yeah, it would have been a lot worse if he hated it there.
Yeah.
And he was always begging us to come home. Yeah. But it was the opposite. Like, he loved it. And so, you know, it was a small sacrifice when you think about it. If he would have survived, you know, that could have changed the whole course of his life, like for the better. And so our sacrifice would have worked. But you know, unfortunately, that's not how it turned out. And so that day we fished, and my daughter, she loved her Bubba, you know. They were close. So we went to a hotel. Well, we went to Dairy Queen that night, had dinner. I took some videos and pictures, not knowing that those would be the last time I ever saw him. And so the morning of the 19th, Sunday, the family and kids were going to church in Uvalde, where we had stayed the night. And so I linked up with this house dad. So Lynn, who I spoke about, the first house parents, Lynn had some family emergency with his father had come up, so they had to leave the program. So he had a new house parents that had just come on about, I think, that month. And so I'd only met them a couple of times. They were older. They're probably in their mid-50s, where Lynn was in like his 30s. So it was a different dynamic for Christian. But I'd asked him, you know, like how are these, you know, how are these parents? Like, how are you doing? And he liked them and stuff like that. So we were just starting to build a new relationship with the new house parents. Yeah. And so they were going to church that morning in Uvalde, and that's where we stayed. And so I was like, hey, man, instead of taking him back to the ranch, let's just link up, and he'll go to church like I'm with y'all. So they met us in the parking lot of the hotel that we were staying at. And I remember, you know, I'm putting his stuff in the car or in the van, and, you know, my daughter starts crying, like, oh, I want you, Bubba, like, don't leave, please, right? And, you know, I picked her up, and I teared up because I didn't want him to leave either. You know, like, it was hard for him being there. but I had to do it. And so I gave him a hug, told him I loved him, and, you know, I'll see you in a couple weeks, because we were going to go back up there on November 1st. Got in the van, and they drove away. And that was the last time we saw them. Conscious. And so 2 weeks had passed. Halloween. He had his last football game was supposed to be that Saturday on November 1st. It was a homecoming game. I think they had a dance that night. Halloween was Friday. And so we took our daughter out to trick or treat. My in-laws were there. My mom had come over. And the plan was to all get up the next day and drive up there for his last game. And Christian, so they couldn't have cell phones. And so what I could do is I could call the house and talk to him that way, or I could text the house parents and ask like Christian to call me. And at about 4:30, I got a text from his house mom saying, "Hey, like Christian, like wants you to call him." And it wasn't abnormal. Like I would get that text a lot, and I like to call Christian like later on, like in the evening, because that's when because Christian was the oldest kid in the house, so he was kind of like a helper, and so all those kids would be in bed, then I could actually sit down and talk to him, without distractions. My in-laws, my mom, they were all gonna get to the house around 5, and we were gonna go and take my daughter out. So I decided, I'll do that, and I'll give him a call when I get back. And so we did, and we had a great time. My daughter, she had a great time. We got back to the house. My mom was packing up some cookies and candy and little like Halloween bags to take Christian for the next day. We planned, hey, we're gonna leave, 7 a.m. to make it up there, and I walked her out. I walked my in-laws out, and I came back inside, and I called the house to speak to my son, and some lady had answered the phone and said, "Has anyone called you?" I said, "No, why?" Said like Christian's been in an accident. He's being airlifted to the hospital. And I was standing in the kitchen, and I just got upset. I think I said something like, "Why the F didn't anyone call me?" And she said, "I'm sorry, sir. Like, I'm just here watching the kids. I don't know what's going on." And I just hang up the phone and tell my wife what happened, and just left. And just left the house. The reason why Christian wanted me to call him that day, at that time, so some of the kids in Lakey, they all they go to these dances and stuff together at some of the parks. So you have the ranch kids and you have the Lakey kids. The Lakey kids were kind of talking crap about the ranch kids because, a lot of them come from broken homes and fostered system and stuff. So they're kind of the outcast kids, right? And somehow Christian had found out that they were kind of like, oh, the ranch kids are going to come to trick or treat. And so he decided not to go. And he was upset. And that's why he wanted me to call him. And instead of calling him, I didn't. And that evening, shortly after that, his house dad had a Polaris, a little UTV, and when kids are upset or they're having, some trouble, they have them go out, hey, get them out in nature, take them for a walk, take them hiking, take them on a ride, do something like that. Just get them out, right? And that's what they were doing. And so they went out to have a ride, and ultimately on the way back, they hit a tree, and Christian was hurt. And so the house dad died on scene. Christian had severe injuries. He had broken his leg in 2 places. had pretty much broken every bone in his face and had several skull fractures and had a real bad fracture to the top of his forehead. And that's why he was airlifted. And so, you know, if I would have just called him when I got the text, maybe they don't have to go take that ride. Maybe I can talk to him and make him feel better, and they don't go for that ride. Maybe he goes and trick-or-treats with, like, you know, goes and has the house parents, like, take him to the city or the town to go, like, meet up with the rest of the kids, you know? So, I mean, those decisions that you think mean nothing, and we make those decisions, like, all the time. You know, like, would that have changed the impact? I don't know. But, you know, I talked to him the last time, the night before. He wanted me to call him. Same thing. I got a text. I called him a little bit later, and we sat there and talked. And his basketball schedule had just come out. And so basketball was his main sport. He loved basketball, and he wanted to tell me when his first game was. And I think his first game is going to be like November 13th, and he wanted me to make sure I knew. He was excited. And so that was our phone call the night before. And he wasn't a big talker, you know. Like, the phone calls were always quick. And so that was the last time I spoke to him. And, you know, I think about, man, if I would have just called him, if I would have just taken 2 seconds. But, you know, if she would have texted me and said, hey, Christian's in a mood, he's upset, can you call him real quick? I would have called him, you know? It's just, it was the same text I got several times, like, before, and I did the same thing I always did, and I mean, something like that, like, haunts me, like every day.
Yeah, it's tough. I just hearing that, it's like I can see where you're like, is it my fault? Is it not my fault? Like, what is it? But I mean, the best I can tell you, brother, is God has a plan for all of us. And that plan, he's written it way before our time. And maybe his plan for Christian was different. And his plan for Christian's legacy to change others and stuff was in a different perspective. And I, till this day, I can't understand sometimes what God's plan is, right? Like, I'm a man in faith, but that's my biggest struggle sometimes is, why do you allow some of these things to happen, right? And we don't know. And I can see where, I mean, just hearing your story right now, like, I can see where that even gives me more of, like, man, I don't know how you're doing it. And, you know, I encourage you to keep being strong. I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing and pushing his legacy. And it's easier said than done, but don't let it eat you, brother. Like, don't let that fact that you weren't able to call him eat you, and don't let it guilt you either. Because you didn't know. You didn't really know the circumstances. You didn't know the extent of it all. And I can easily see where that can overcome your mind and just take you to some deep places. So I encourage you to just keep doing what you're doing, man. Like, keep pushing forward and keep making his legacy grow. It's going to change people. It's going to change kids that might need it. It's going to change, you know, your story. I mean, just right now, the last 5 minutes of you telling me about Christian, I can see that the kid was already in the right direction. He was doing the right thing. And maybe him giving his life might be something for others to save their lives. You know, and as hard as that sounds, and as difficult as that sounds, is maybe that was God's plan for him. Maybe that was his destiny. And we might not understand it and agree with it, but maybe that plan right there was to save other lives. And that was Christian's legacy, to save other lives, to reach out to not just kids that are in need, but men, right? To see that, to be able to see somebody like you sit down here and actually have to tell the story of your son. It might be the option to save somebody's life. You don't know, right? We don't know. We don't know, just like you don't know if that call would have happened or not, if it would have changed the trajectory of the situation. But
yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm, you know, as I try to continue this new path of my faith, and, you know, I'm in a grief group on Tuesday nights. we talk about that. I mean, it's hard to accept that. It's hard to accept that. It was God's plan, but no one wants to accept that.
Yeah.
But if you have faith and if you truly believe, like, that God's in control, and I know where Christian's at, and he's in heaven where we all want to be one day, but yeah, that's something that I'm slowly coming to terms with and getting to know more of my faith and like the story but when I got that phone call, I didn't know what to do. I just knew I had to go get to him. And again, he's in Lakey, which is north of Kerrville. So for me, it's a good little drive, about 2 hours. And I just grabbed my keys, told my wife Christian's being airlifted out, and I left. And I just started heading towards the ranch. So for me, that route is kind of on the way to where the medical center is in San Antonio. And I didn't know anything other than he's being airlifted out. So I'm flying down the highway. I have lights on my truck for when I do my off-duty jobs and stuff like that. So I turn my lights on, and I'm just trying to get there. And I make some phone calls. I call his mom, tell her what's going on, tell her that he's being airlifted. I think someone had called her too, so she kind of knew, but she didn't know the whole extent. I had asked her to call dispatch and try to figure out where he's being taken. And I mean, this is kind of where it goes back to for some reason I'm calm when things are crazy, right? Like how you were saying, you're calm when people are going. I think it's just instilled in us from the military, from law enforcement. We understand controlled chaos. Like in the outside, it looks like it's crazy, right? But for us, it's just controlled chaos. It's a lot of moving parts, and we've always been trained. Battle drills is so that you don't have to think, you can just do. And I've always been good at that. And so during that time, I'm driving 100 plus on the highway. I'm going on the shoulder, but I'm calling. And again, this goes back to all law enforcement experience. I kind of knew how to get the information. So I called. I didn't know. At the time, I couldn't think of the county that he lived in because it's a county right next to Kerr County, and just because of my mind. But I knew, okay, let me call Kerrville PD dispatch, and they can get me to where I need to be. So I looked them up. I called them, told them what's going on, told them I was off duty, I'm a police officer, that my son was being airlifted out. He's close to Lakey, and they were able to transfer me to their dispatch. And so I spoke to their dispatch, and they told me, hey, Christian's being flown to University Hospital in San Antonio. So now at this point, I have a direction. I have a mission, right? I'm not just going to the ranch. I now know where he's going. So I'm pushing that information out to his mom, to my wife, to my mom, making sure everyone knows, hey, he's going there. And so during that whole time, I'm able to drive where I don't kill myself. I'm not risking other people's lives. I'm able to make phone calls, talk, and just do what I need to do. And then once I got all that done, and now it's just, okay, get to the hospital. That's kind of where I broke down. I mean, I never had to experience this before, and so I just kind of hit the steering wheel, yelled out, screamed. I don't really remember exactly what all, but I just broke down. And I remember I was getting close to the hospital, but I wasn't there yet, and I saw a helicopter coming in, and I got upset because I thought that was Christian and that he was gonna get there before I got there, and I wanted to be there. And so I drive up to the hospital. I see the front doors. There's a children's hospital ER door, and then right next to it is the adult. So I stop my truck right in front of the doors. I run inside and I speak to a gentleman in the children's part, and he looks it up and says, well, he's going to go to the adult side. So I run out those doors and I run to the adult doors and run inside, and there's a nurse there. Tell him what's going on, tell him my son's name, and she looks it up. And she has me wait there for like a second. Another nurse comes. You know, they talk about something real quick, and then she says, like, follow me. And so I follow her, and we go to, I don't know exactly what it's called, but the trauma unit, where they're going to be, like, taking, like, I'm Christian, right? And there's the hallway and the trauma unit doors are right there. There's some waiting rooms in that hallway. Well, she takes me into the trauma, or through the trauma doors, and now this is where, like, your OR rooms are at, right? You know, glass walls you can see, and
Actually used to work at that trauma unit, so I can only imagine the.
And I remember there was a group of like nurses and like a doctor. I think it was a female, if I can remember correctly, but comes up, you know, introduces herself. I can't remember if it was a guy or girl. I'm doctor now, but you know, tells me, hey, like Christian is on his way. He's being flown in and stuff like that. And I'm asking questions, and they're really not giving me a lot of like information. And I'm just like, you know, is he alive? Just like tell me that. And they said, as far as like right now, yes. And I didn't know the extent of anything.
Yeah.
You know, just from my experience, I kind of knew, okay, well, there's two ways of thinking about this. The ranch is in a remote area. So being airlifted out is probably common in those remote spots.
You're like, is it the severity of his
So
injuries?
the severity was, you know, if he's being airlifted from like my house, that's bad.
Bad.
The remote just could be because of distance, right? If it wasn't crazy bad or too bad, maybe they go to Kerrville, like hospital. I kind of knew that. Well, he's going to university, but then I was like, you know what? If they're airlifting him, they might as well take him to the best, right?
The best place, yeah.
And it's not a far flight from Kerrville to there, so I didn't really know what to expect or how to. I just knew that, okay, they're airlifting him out. It's going to be bad, you know, and so they weren't really telling me a lot. And finally I was just like, I'm calm and stuff, and I'm saying thank you and just being polite and stuff. And I just finally was like, listen, I'm an off-duty police officer. I don't know exactly how this part works, but I do know that y'all get updates of patients coming in because doctors and stuff have to get ready for what they're about to have. And so I was like, so I know you have some information. I was like, I'm not going to freak out. I just need to know. So I'm prepared. And, you know, I think that's when they told me, you know, he has severe head injuries and stuff like that, but he is alive. And so now I kind of have, okay, now it's his head, you know. Again, at that point, I don't know the extent of his injuries. And so another nurse who is an assistant to the chaplain comes and grabs me, and we walk out to the main hallway, and she's wonderful. She's asking me, what can I do for you? Do you need me to call anybody? You know, just doing what, you know, her job is to keep me calm. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm already making phone calls. Now I know exactly where he's at. I'm telling my wife, I'm telling his mom, my mom, hey, come to this floor. This is where we're at and stuff like that. And they're just like, hey, when he gets here, he's going to come through these double doors. And so, again, I thought he was already there because I saw the helicopter when I first got there, and I was mad. So, okay, I knew that wasn't him. And then I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for like, I don't even know, 30 minutes, 45. And I'm like, where is he at? When I initially got the phone call, the lady said he's being airlifted to the hospital.
Thought it was already happening.
So I thought he was already like up in the air.
Yeah.
So it took me driving, you know, those speeds with my lights. Took me about 20 minutes to get to the hospital. And then I'm waiting another, you know, by the time I actually get to the trauma place, talk to the doctors, you know, I don't know how far, like 40 minutes in. And now I'm waiting another 45. And so I'm getting kind of upset, like, where are they, right? Come to find out later on is it took them 40 minutes to stabilize Christian in the hospital or in the helicopter. before they could take off.
Correct.
And so I didn't know that, but that's why it took so long. And the time came, the lady comes out and says, hey, they just landed. He's going to be coming through those doors. And I was like, oh, like, okay. And so I just waited, and the doors open, and you have the air life, like, paramedics there, and those guys were rock stars, highly trained guys. And they're bringing him in, and I just see Christian. He has a bandage around his head. His face is covered in blood. And, you know, they're working on him. And I just tell him, like, hey, bud, like, Daddy's here. Like, Daddy's here. Like you're going to be okay. And they open the doors to the trauma hall, and they allow me to go in. And so I just follow him in, and I continue just to tell Christian that I'm here. And they wheel him into the ER room. And again, like, the entire thing is glass. Yeah. So I can see inside, but there's so many people around him that I can't see him, but I can see his bed. And I just remember, like, you know, paramedics are yelling out vitals and what they did. And you know, there's multiple doctors there because of the multiple, like, injuries, and nurses. And it's just like this controlled chaos is going on. Mm-hmm. And to me, and I don't know why I was thinking that at the time, but I was just thinking, like, man, this is impressive. Like, just so many people working together, and it's just like clicking. And yeah, I think, and that kind of calmed me, because I felt like, okay, they're doing a good job.
See, they're doing what they got to do.
Yeah, I feel like if it was not like that, I probably would have got upset.
Yeah.
Like, what, like, you know, like, what are y'all doing? But I could just see them work, and a nurse came and walked to me and put 2 bracelets in a baggie that Christian was wearing, and gave them to me. And so that's this one right here, this white one. He was wearing this one at the accident, and so I just sit there and like watch them work on him. Eventually, he has to get wheeled away to go take some images, and I go out to the waiting area, and that's where, like, my wife starts to come, my mom, his mom, and people start to come in. So it's just a waiting game at that point in time, and I don't know how the sequence of events came about, but, you know, we're in and out seeing Christian. At one point, after they took all the scans and stuff, me and his mom, Brittany, were able to go back and actually see him and talk to him. And that was the first time that we were able to stand at his bedside, and it's the ER room, and, like, touch him and really talk to him. And the neurologist is there. And, you know, I saw Christian when he first came in. So this was, I think, Brittany's first time seeing him. And it wasn't a pretty sight.
No.
Like, Christian was broken bad. He was hurt. And at that point in time, you know, there was still a lot of blood all over his face. And so, yeah, that was the first time we got to, like, really be there and talk to him. And the neurologist is asking us questions, and we had to sign consent forms and stuff like that. And we're just like, yeah, like, do, like, whatever you need to do to save our child. And so at that point in time, we didn't think Christian was going to pass away. We knew he was hurt. There was a female doctor that didn't really sugarcoat it. She said, you know, Christian sustained a very bad brain injury to the top of his forehead. We don't know the extent of the damage or what he'll be like, but, you know, it's bad. And so we knew it was going to be bad, but we didn't think he was going to pass away. So in my mind, at that point in time, I was just gearing up for the process of, like, healing. And they have to, like, already put in my mind that, hey, Christian may not be the same kid. My nephew Seth, he has disabilities, autism, CP, seizures. He'll always have to have my sister there with him. So I've grown up with someone with disabilities like that. I've seen it. So I'm not new to what it looks like. And I think that may be the reason why I was able to kind of put my head around it and be like, all right, we're just gonna,
Go with what we get.
whatever it is, I've seen my sister do it and stuff like that. Like, we'll do it.
Yeah.
And, we already had made that decision. And I knew that, like, my wife and his mom and everyone would be on the same boat. There'd be no question. And, yeah. And so I think that was, around 1 like midnight, 1 a.m., they're done with him downstairs, and they take him to the pediatric, like, ICU on the 10th floor. And then we had to wait around for some time for him to finally get into his room and set up. And and that was probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 in the morning, and they finally got him like I'm situated. So that's when we could able to actually go in and see him, and that's when, like, my wife and other family could go and see him, and he was just it didn't look like him. He was swollen, he was broken, it just didn't look like the Christian that we all knew. And that started the 5 days of what we had to experience, like in the hospital. And so, yeah. So at that point in time, we had at one point in time, I had called Christian's, my ex-father-in-law, like Christian's mom's dad, asked if the pastor in Del Rio who dedicated him Christian could come and pray, like over him. And at that point in time, like, I always believed in God. I did have faith. It just wasn't strong. But I kind of, Christian's mom and that side of the family are very strong in their faith. And so I knew how close they were to the pastor. And I knew him, like, personally as well. And so, yeah, he drove down that night and got there, like, probably 3 or 4 in the morning. And he was there praying, like, over Christian in his room. And that kind of started, like, at the time I didn't know, but it kind of started my push towards going, like, trying to get back to my faith and stuff like that. And, the thing about brain swelling is kind of like when you roll your ankle. The first day's not bad, right?
After.
It's day 2 or 3 when the ankle really swells, the bruising and all that. So the first day was actually not bad because the skull fractures actually helped relieve pressure in Christian's brain, and it hadn't fully started to swell yet. So there wasn't a big worry of pressure yet. But the doctors told us, like, hey, it takes 48 to 72 hours for the swelling to peak. So right now it's fine, but it's going to swell, and that's what we're going to be worried about. And so at that point, it was kind of like a waiting game. Can we get past this, like, the 72 hours? And, that was, his broken legs were healed, his face fractures were healed, but the brain.
Yeah.
So that was the serious part of it. The neurologist was the lead doctor. Nothing could happen without his say so. And so that started the journey of the hospital stay. Day 2, it was the start of day 2. It wasn't bad. They had to do some stuff with him, Christian. I think during day 2 they actually had lowered his pain meds because the neurologist needed to see how he would react.
See if he'd wake up and stuff.
Not wake up, but just because he couldn't assess the damage or the extent while Christian was on pain meds.
Yeah.
And so they lowered the dosage, and Christian actually responded. He had done something to his shoulder, like squeezed his shoulder, and Christian responded, like he moved. And then he moved his legs, which spiked his heart rate because he was in pain.
Yeah.
So at that point, we're like, oh my God, like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, he responded. He was never conscious, but he responded to that. And so I think that's what the doctor needed to kind of see. They put him back on pain meds, but man, the initial reaction, like, hit a tower of pain meds. It was like a 10, 12 tower of just meds. Yeah. He had tubes in and out of him. It was just crazy. The nurses that worked on him for those 5 days were so amazing. Like they had 12-hour shifts, and from the time they came in to the time that they left, they were just working on him. You know, if it wasn't like, you know, he couldn't control his body temperature because of his brain, so they had to cool him down or heat him up. They had to make sure compartment syndrome didn't like set in on his legs. Every time they pushed one thing, it would cause like a low heart rate, so they had to push something. Like it was just always something.
Yeah, it's busy working.
And they were working, man. We were so grateful to have the nurses that we had. I mean, they cared, they communicated like with us, like we knew exactly what they were doing. They asked us, you know, do you have questions? And they hadn't, you know, they didn't make us feel like we were bothering them if we were asking them stuff. And of course, we want to know everything.
Yeah.
We want to know exactly what's happening, and we want to know what's this, what's that, you know, why are you pushing this? And they were explaining to us, and they were amazing. And so, you know, throughout those days, we kind of got, you know, we got a quick crash course on everything. And I mean, day 5, like we could tell you a lot of what was going on. Yeah. You know, like I could tell you exactly what these like numbers meant and stuff like that. And I think it's called the CT, the ICP.
Intracranial pressure.
Yeah. So they put the monitor in his brain, and that's what kind of where we were fixated on that number.
Yeah.
For the 5 days. And
That's
so
the main number right there.
So they did that, and I guess anything below 20 is good. Once it starts getting above that, it gets bad, right? And so the first day, good. Think end of second day, good. Going into the third day, early morning. So at this time, me and Brittany haven't really slept. We haven't eaten. You know, we're going on, I don't even know. Like, we had little cat naps like here and there, but we're just exhausted. We're like zombies. And I remember Brittany was sleeping, and I think my wife was out in the waiting room asleep, but then we switched. My wife had come in. I asked Brittany if I could take a nap. So my wife and Brittany were up with Christian, and it was, I think, 5 or 6 a.m. I woke up to like nurses and doctors and stuff, and Christian's brain had swelled to the point where they needed to do something. And we had asked them before, you know, what would they do, because they had told us that the skull fractures had opened his skull up to like the max that they would open a skull up to. So they don't know if they would take the little piece out because it's already been open. So I had asked them, okay, well, if that time comes, then what would we do? And it was kind of like, we'll just play it by ear. So that time had come, and they decided that they were going to take a piece of skull out. And so they moved us to a waiting room inside the ICU, like a more private one, and another doctor, kind of the head doctor that was over that unit, was there. It was a female, and she kind of told us, like, you know, what was going on, what was gonna happen. And I remember it was me, the doctor, Letty, my wife, and Brittany were in this waiting room, and the doctor, you know, straight up told us, like, you know, Christian may not make it out of this surgery. Like, he may not live. And that's when it hit me that I may lose my son. That was the first time that I was prepared for whatever life was going to bring us. I wasn't ready for that. And I don't know, like that was the first time that those words, your son may not make it, were like real to me. And I remember just after that, I couldn't, she was talking, but I wasn't listening. I could hear her talk, but I just couldn't get past those words. And, you know, she said, hey, it's going to take a couple hours, or however long that procedure was going to take, and we would wait in there. And so she left, and I just remember, like, you know, like the whole exterior wall was a window, and I walked to that, and again, you know, we don't want to show emotions, right? And especially in front of like our wives and Christian's mom and stuff, and I remember just punching the window and like breaking down, and that was probably the first time that they probably saw me break down like that, and yeah, and so that's kind of when it went from we had high hopes that Christian was going to survive, to just a downhill from there. They did the procedure. It did help. His ICP, the pressure went down, and so we were glad for that. And when it got above 20, we were shocked. We were worried, and we're just begging God, please just keep it at 20. Christian can sustain that. Just don't let it get to the 30s, right? And then it started getting to the 30s. And then we go to that same cycle again, pleading with God, please just let it go down. Please don't let it go any higher, because at this point, there's nothing that they can do.
Yeah.
It's just a waiting game. And so, now we're pleading, don't go in the 40s. And throughout this time, we have family there now. There's so much going on. This is a very quick story of 5 days, and there's just so much in and out, and people wanting to see him Christian, and just so much going on. And day 4, it had just gotten worse, and so what the next step was they wanted to put Christian in an induced coma and stop his brainwaves. And so stop all, in hopes that would help with the swelling. And they had already started draining his cranial fluid and blood from his skull to leave room for the brain to swell. So they were doing whatever they could to try to help with the swelling. And of course, light or any noise or stuff like that, that's all bad. So, day 4, we had told the family, hey, y'all can't see Christian. We had been telling them, hey, maybe here in a bit, but then Christian's, he just kept getting worse and worse. And so finally we had to tell him, listen, you're not going to see him right now. I had to go downstairs and tell the family. And when, we brought them all in, and I said, because they kept texting, and, hey, when can we see him? And we would tell them, maybe in a couple hours. And then we had to tell them, hey, you can't right now, maybe in a couple hours, right? So they're all just waiting downstairs, and they're all there for support, but they all wanted to see him. And so finally, I had to go downstairs and tell them, listen, this is real. I don't think they understood the seriousness of Christian's injuries until I told them, Christian may die. And that's kind of when I saw a lot of faces drop. And now it was real for them that, this is a lot worse than what they had thought.
Yeah.
They don't see him, so they can't understand exactly what he looks like.
You haven't seen the progression.
They don't see the impact. And only a couple of us, grandparents, my wife, his mom, only a small group had seen Christian and just really seen, the injuries and what was going on. And so everyone downstairs, I guess, just couldn't grasp that until I went downstairs and told them. And so we made the decision to put him in an induced coma, and we did that. And they had to shave his head because they needed to monitor his brainwaves to see if he was having seizures. What's that called? Not an EKG, but
EEG. Yeah.
An EEG, right? And that's a little sticky.
Yeah, all over.
It's a lot. And so Christian's ICP, his pressure was holding steady that whole day. And then when they started to put those little things on him, the pressure started going up. And as parents, we're like, dude, just leave him alone.
Yeah.
Just don't do anything. Just stop. So the pressure stays there. But they needed to. They needed to see if Christian was having seizures and see what was going on. And so they started monitoring him. They put him in the coma. The brain waves were gone. So they pulled all the pain meds. And that was day 4 going into the morning of day 5. And the brain just kept swelling. So the morning of day 5, I think the numbers were at 40, 41. They were way up there. He had gotten worse throughout the night. Letty had stayed up all night that night so we could get some sleep. And she kind of watched him get worse and worse. And so that morning, the numbers just kept climbing, and there had been another doctor that we hadn't seen on day 4, but he had come in. Tall white guy, great guy, man. He was an awesome doctor. I don't know what he was, but he seemed like he was like probably one of like the supervisors or leaders, because, you know, he seemed like he was in charge. Well, he came to us and he was like, you know, has anyone told you exactly what Christian's injuries were and what's going on? And he really took the time to really explain it to us. And we didn't know. Like, we didn't know. Like we knew, but we didn't know the extent. And we really, at the time, just didn't care, you know? Like, what are we going to... So if we know there's some injuries, that's not going to save his life.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, I think it was like day 3 or day 4, like, I just felt helpless. Helpless as a father, as a man, you know, all this training, like all my skill sets and capabilities and everything that has allowed me to be a good like officer and a good protector to not just me, my family, but to others. And I couldn't do anything to save my son. I couldn't do anything. I didn't have any skill set to save my son or to help him in any way. So I had to just let go and give full authority to the nurses and doctors. And, you know, that's hard to do. Now I'm reliant on them for my son's life, and that's hard to do, you know, as a father and as a leader. And so he came in and he talked to us, and that's when we found out. So we had knew that he had sustained fractures to the face, but we didn't know the extent. And he started reading off a list of like 20 different bones in his face, and that was just the left side. Then the same thing to the right side. And so he said, yeah, like, you know, he pretty much broke all the bones in his face, and we didn't know that. And his mom had got upset at that time because she felt like that was something we should have known. But I told her, I was like, man, like, they don't have time at that point to explain to us every little thing. Like, they're trying to save our son.
Focus on the brain.
Yeah, like, you know, like, what's it going to help that we knew or not?
Yeah.
And so, and then he drew us pictures and told us exactly, like, what was going on and how the brain worked and this and that. So he was really good. So on day 5, the morning of, I had gone out and asked another doctor who had been there the whole time. He was head of that unit. I said, what's the next step? And it was going to be herniation.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, well, tell me what that looks like. Like I need to know. I need to know if it's going to make a sound. I need to be prepared because Brittany will be in there and whoever else, right? And so he tells me, you know, it's going to be a spike in the heart rate, a spike in the pressure. It's going to go very, very high, and then it's just going to drop back to normal. When he herniates, it's going to drop back down because it releases that pressure. Mm-hmm. And so at about, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning on day 5, on November 4th, it starts happening. His ICP, now in the 60s, you can see the blood pressure starting to come up, and I know what's happening. Brittany, my wife, had to go home, or she had to do something to where she wasn't there, was going to leave and come back real quick, and it was just me and Brittany were in the room, and it started happening. And I remember, you know, now nurses are coming in, doctors are starting to come in, things are starting to become more chaotic as the herniation is getting closer. And so as that starts happening, Brittany, his mom, is starting to, you know, get more frantic. And I remember telling the nurse, like, hey, because everyone's downstairs, because we're on the 10th floor. And I'm like, hey, go get Brittany's parents. Brittany's husband at the time, like, wasn't there. I was like, go get her parents. I need someone up here with her because I know what's happening and we're about to lose them. And so, I mean, that whole point in time, it's just chaotic. And the nurses and doctors, they're trying everything and anything to do whatever they can. And I remember that doctor was in there, and Brittany just asks, you know, I could tell he was trying everything. He was trying anything he could. You could tell he was doing like whatever he could think of. probably things that he knew like weren't gonna work, but he was doing them like anyways. And Christian was just in front of us, and we're sitting on the couch that's in the room. I'm standing, Brittany is, I'm sitting, and Brittany asked that doctor who's at the foot of like Christian's bed, that's just like right here, probably like closer to like me and you, like, is my son gonna die? And he kneels down, and he has his mask on, so we just see his eyes, and he just looks at Brittany, and for me it seemed like forever, but he just stares at her in the eyes and then just says, yes, he's gonna die. And I mean, I don't know a lot of what happened at that time. You know, Letty comes back, people are coming back. I don't know really what's going on, but before that, it happens. He herniates, and you know, it did what the doctor said. It spiked and then it dropped, and so you know, it broke the brainstem, and now Christian's brain dead, no brain activity, but he's still on life support on the machine, so he's still alive. So we just had to watch our son basically die in front of us, and the machines are the only thing that's keeping his body alive. And at that point in time, they let everyone come upstairs because now it's time to say your goodbyes, and everyone is coming up, and during that time, I called the funeral home that we're gonna use, and let them know that you know Christian is gonna pass, and I kind of get that like squared away and stuff like that. And again, I don't know how I'm doing that. I don't know how I can make a phone call.
Yeah.
And start planning the funeral while my son's still in the room. But I just, you know, it was my job. You know, he was my son, or he is my son, and it was my duty to do that kind of stuff. And so I did that, and everyone had said their goodbyes, and they were slowly kind of leaving the room, and eventually it was just, you know, four of us. It was me, Letty, Brittany, and her husband Ryan. And, you know, we're sitting at Christian's bedside, and we're just telling stories and talking and just, I don't know, just talking. And sometime throughout the conversation, like Brittany had said, you know, Christian's been in heaven. Because at this point, from the time he herniated to this time is probably, I think it's like 5 p.m., 6 p.m. So it's been 6-7 hours. Yeah. And I remember we were just talking, and in the course of conversation, like Brittany said, you know, Christian's been in heaven. This is just his body. And we continued talking. It was nothing that was significant at that moment. And I remember thinking, like, you know, like when do you say it's time? Like when do you turn the machines off, knowing that your son's gonna die? I didn't know, and so, you know, I don't know how long we talked for, but I remember it had to be around 5 because I asked that question, and Letty had looked at her watch, either because I asked that question or just for some like reason, and it was 5:18. And Christian was born on May 18th, so 5:18. And, you know, to us, that was crazy. You know, what a coincidence that you look at your watch at that moment and it's 5:18. And it was just after I asked, you know, how do we know? And so, you know, I kind of took that as a sign. And that's when, you know, I said, you know, it's time. And so, Ryan and Letty left the room so me and Brittany could have alone time with Christian. And they had moved Christian over on the bed so Brittany could get into bed with Christian and lay with him. And I just stood at the head of next to Christian. And we just sat there and talked and just told him how proud we were of him and how much we loved him. how sorry we were. Like, what do you tell your child? Like, how do you tell him that he has to go to heaven? At 14 years old. So we just stayed there talking to him and holding him and just telling him how much we loved him and that we were there. And I asked Brittany to tell me what she had said earlier about Christian being in heaven. And so she tells me, like, Christian's in heaven. This is just his body. Like, he's been in heaven. And so I had her tell me that a couple more times. And throughout that 5 days with Pastor Terry, the pastor from Del Rio and stuff, like, I just felt closer to God. At certain points when things were hard, the comfort of faith in God and stuff kind of helped me through those moments. And, at the time I didn't know that or was even, I could feel it and think about it, but I wasn't consciously thinking about it. And I don't know, like, her saying that just kind of put me at ease, knowing that, Christian was in heaven. He's in the place where we all, like, want to be and where we all, hope that we get to one day. And it just calmed me. And so I had told her, or we had talked and said, like, we're not going to cry. We're going to stay strong for him when we do decide that it's time to turn the machines off. And so we said it was time. I told Letty, hey, can you let the nurses know it's time? And so they came back in the room, and it was us four. Brittany's still laying in bed. I'm standing next to Christian, and Letty's next to me, and the nurses are working around us, getting ready. And when we know they're about to turn like the machines off, that's gonna do it. Like, I just tell Brittany to just keep telling me, keep telling me, and she's just like, Christian's in heaven. This is just his body. I just told her, like, keep telling me. And so she just keeps repeating it. And every time she says it, it just kind of, it gives me some type of sense of calmness. I don't know why, or like why it did. I don't even know if that was why I was calm. I just needed to know that. And those words calmed me, knowing that he was in heaven. And so the nurse turned the machines off, and Brittany's repeating it, and we're all there, and we're all holding Christian, and he takes his last breath, and now your son's gone. So your child just died, like, in your arms. 5 days prior, we were talking about basketball. 5 days prior, we were getting ready to go to his last football game, and 5 days later, now we have a child who's gone to heaven. And so he passes away, and we stay there for some time, and me and Brittany just hold him, and we talk to him, and probably stay there about an hour, and then Christian starts getting colder, and I had laid a blanket, like, over him, so Brittany couldn't touch him. And because we know what happens with bodies that have deceased bodies, and I can tell he's starting to get a little stiff and stuff. And so I told Brittany, or I was like, we need to go. Like, I didn't want her to experience that.
Yeah.
And so we did. And it's crazy. You spend the whole 5 days was such a roller coaster, so emotionally draining, physically, like, draining, and you have to leave the hospital without your son. You come in there with high hopes that he's going to be okay and that we're going to fight this, and then you leave there and your son's gone, and you just got to get in your truck and drive home. And so that's what I did. I got in my truck and drove home, and Letty had left to go, I think, be with our daughter and stuff. So we didn't allow Mia to come to the hospital. We didn't want her to see a Christian in that state, and she was struggling because we were gone for 5 days, and so she knew that, she knew that her Bubba was hurt, but she didn't understand what was going on, and so we knew we needed to be there for her too. Yeah. She was about to have a life altering, as well, and so you just drive home that night and just get in bed and go to sleep. It's surreal. It's shocking. I mean, I'm probably still in shock. It was only 7 months ago that he passed. I think it'll be 8 months, a couple of days, but so we get home and we go to sleep and we wake up that next morning and our daughter was at my in-laws. And so we had to get up and we had to go tell her what happened. And so we get dressed and Letty drives and I'm in the passenger seat. And, I don't know how to tell her that, her brother's gone. So we had lost a family member a month or two prior to cancer. And so Mia was close to him, to Jesse, and so we had to explain to her what heaven was and where Jesse went, and so she knew about heaven and death and stuff because of that. And we had just explained to her death, and now we have to tell her that that's where Christian, her Bubba, is. And so we get there, and we bring her outside, and I just kneel down next to her and just tell her, Bubba had to go to heaven. And she was just like, okay, Daddy, you don't have to cry, and just ran off to go play. It just broke my heart because she doesn't understand.
Yeah.
She didn't understand at that moment how much it's going to affect her for the rest of her life. And so then, you have to plan your son's funeral. And I don't know about you, but I never thought where any of my children are going to be buried. I didn't even know where I was going to be buried. I had nothing planned for for this. And so we had plenty of friends and family that would have done the funeral for us, planned it, did it for us, but I felt that I wanted to do it myself. I needed to do it myself as the last thing that I would do for my son. And so I told my family and Letty and stuff that I'm gonna plan this. Just if I ask for help, please be there, but just let me plan it. And so they were all respectful to it. Everyone was a big help. Letty was a big help. Brittany's parents were a huge help. My family, my sister was a huge help. So we had a lot of support and a lot of help. And if I asked for help, they were there and did exactly what what I needed. But I was able to plan the funeral. We got him a beautiful custom casket, and it's the same gentleman that did a lot of the caskets for the flood victims. He's out in Texas, in Victoria. And so he was great. He made the casket. He worked with us, and he delivered it to the funeral home, and it was beautiful. And so we had the funeral about 2 weeks after, and had to bury it and just bury your son. It was just all unreal. It's unreal how quick your life changes. I always say tomorrow's not promised, but it's deeper than that.
Oh, yeah.
5 minutes from now isn't. You know,
Exactly.
I went from literally trick or treating, walking my in-laws out, to 2 minutes later, I'm on a phone saying my life's being like my son's being airlifted to the hospital. You know, so it goes deeper than just 5 minutes. Like, you never know. And so that was a real eye opener for me. And as a cop and being in the military, like, we know this, like, we know how quick like things change, and we know how fragile life is.
Yeah.
And you just don't think it's going to happen to you.
No.
You just never think that it's going to happen to you. And I mean, that was some of my worries, like with that kid that committed suicide at 17. You know, that really affected me, because I knew Christian was having struggles, and Christian at the time I think was 13, and so they weren't that far off in age.
Yeah.
And you know, you see more and more teenagers and school kids are committing suicide. I mean, even like middle school kids and younger are committing suicide.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's crazy to
Getting
you.
bad.
And then so, you know, that used to always worry me. Fentanyl pills would worry me. You know, I was always so scared that because Christian was struggling and he wanted to fit in, that he would take that pill that one time.
Yeah.
And so I always tried to like instill in him, like, you know, those kind of things, and try to never, you know, keep him away from the realities of life. You know, I like really allowed him to see like real life. You know, I took him downtown to see the homeless and to see, you know, drug addicts, and like see what that life looks like. You know, I showed him, you know, things on documentaries on YouTube and stuff, because I really wanted him to know that, hey man, like, you know, you're old enough now to understand that your decisions can like make or break. And like, I didn't hide, you know, what happened to me and my, you know, getting arrested and losing my scholarship. Like, he knew that, because I wanted him to know that, hey man, like, you're getting in high school now, so, you know, your actions are going to have bigger consequences.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to go down the same path as I did, even though, you know, I think my life has been wonderful and great. You know, there are things that I wanted to do that I can't do, or that have hindered me because of my choices I made 20-something years ago.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want him to have to face those same things. And so those were always my worries with him as a parent. So when he went to that ranch, I kind of felt relieved, because they were so isolated that I knew that, okay, fentanyl is probably not going to be a big issue for me.
Yeah.
You know, or even driving, you know, because they're always on that ranch.
Yeah.
Never in a million years did I think that he would crash in a Polaris and hit a tree. And that was the last thing I ever thought. I was scared of him being by the water, fishing, him falling in. That worried me a lot, but never did I think that would happen.
Yeah. Man, I'm sorry. Like I said, I can't sit here and understand half of what you're feeling and what you felt through that situation. And I mean, now in my current career, I've seen that in that actual same hospital that you're talking about. I worked at that PICU for a little bit, and when you said some of the descriptions of those doctors, I kind of feel like I know who you're talking about. So it even made it feel more, I'm not gonna lie, emotional for me, because I've seen many parents in that situation, and now to see you, somebody I know, I talk to and stuff, telling me the story, it's tough, man. And I don't wish that upon anybody, and I would hate for anybody to deal with that. And I can only imagine what I would feel like if I was in that situation. But this is why I wanted you to be here today, because I believe that Christian's legacy is a lot stronger than any of us think or know right now. I think his story is going to be huge for many people, because, you know, as much as it sounds crazy and we don't understand it, but it sounds like Christian's working through you, man. God's working through you, through Christian and you, and he's gonna push something out. And I think what you're doing right now is just the start of something bigger. And I encourage you, and I keep motivating you to keep making Christian's legacy strong. And, you know, whatever comes of it, just keep going. And I support you 100%. I know you got a lot of us that are standing behind you, that got your back and support, you know, to grow Christian's legacy and for you to push through it and make it happen. You know, like I said, man, it's so difficult, but I'm proud of how you've handled it, and I'm sure it's not been easy, and I'm sure you have your dark days and everything, and just know that you always have someone you can call. You have my number. You have, people like Sean and everybody who I know are there to listen if needed. And is it going to be easy from here on out? Probably not. You're going to have your ups and downs. Of course you are. That happens. It's expected. But just know you have a community supporting you, and you have many people who want to see what you're going to make out of this, because I believe you started already on the right path and what you're doing to make his name known and reach out to, everyone and push forward. And I really believe there's something with men's mental health that Christian Story is going to help with, because like I said, the stuff that you've had to deal with, from watching your son born on Skype to a divorce to war to everything, and then having to bury your own son. Like, if that doesn't open up another man's thoughts to say, you know what, I do need to go get help. That's why I said Christian Story might save a lot of lives.
Yeah.
And
Appreciate it.
And just, I encourage you to keep going no matter how hard the days get. But just remember, you're doing it all for Christian. He's watching over you, man.
Yeah.
And you're going to be with Christian one day, and just, I'm sure your faith has grown so much more from the moment that it happened to now. And that right there is another testimony of how God has worked through both of you guys. And God's going to reunite you guys one day. Christian's here with you right now. And, it's going to do something, man. I have a feeling it's going to do something for people. And I encourage you to just keep pushing forward, man. Keep pushing his name.
Yeah, the faith journey is definitely not easy.
No, it's not. It's hard.
I do one step forward and two steps back. I'm definitely not perfect. I definitely have my moments where, I'm not godly and stuff, but, I'm trying to be better. But, the journey I'm doing with all this, ultra marathons and Ironmans and stuff, it wasn't my intent. Back September of last year, I'd gone to Virginia. My buddy, who was my old PL from Afghanistan years, he was doing ultra marathon, 100K, up in the mountains in Virginia, and asked if I would come crew him. And I didn't know anything about like ultras, We'd just been friends since I got out, and he's been out. And I said, yeah, sure. And he flew me out there, and I crewed him, and it was a pretty cool experience, like seeing him, and his name's Metcalf. And he's one of the hardest guys I know personally,
Yeah.
He's been to Ranger School, SF Scuba, all these schools, and just has always succeeded. I've been to combat, like I'm with him. Like I've seen how he worked in combat and on deployment and stuff. And he's just a real hard man. And he did this race, and after the race, he sat down, and his wife and children were there, and he was like in tears. And like if you know Metcalf, like he's not a tear up guy,
Yeah.
like at all. And he was just like, man, like that was hard. That was hard. And I was like, damn, like if he's like this, then that means it had to been really hard.
Yeah.
And it's one of the harder races because of like the elevation.
Yeah.
And there's a time constraint, so it's definitely a push. And so I was like, man, like, before Christian, I was facing my own demons and like battles and stuff. And, there's a lot there that I didn't go into with my own like mental health. But, years of like struggling, and then, that kind of roller coastered into like struggles with my marriage and struggles with being a parent and my career and stuff like that. But I needed something hard, like mentally. And I felt like I hadn't done anything really mentally hard that since the military days. And I'm really big in jiu-jitsu. I do compete a lot, and I've been training that for almost like 10 years now. And, people would consider that hard, like mentally and physically hard, especially when you go compete. But I enjoy that.
Yeah.
So it's not hard for me to do that. It's not mentally hard. But I needed something that would really push me on mentally. So even before Christian, I decided to sign up for a 100K race called Tejas Trails, and it was Bandera. And I had asked my buddy if he would fly down and do it with me. And so he said yes. So we had already, made the plans and got the cabins reserved and stuff. And I started training for it. and then the accident occurred. And so from Halloween to January, I didn't do anything physical. You know, I just lost Christian, and my buddy had called me. I think 2 weeks prior, and had said, "Hey man, like I know, you probably don't want to talk about this or whatever, but I still want to come down and do the race. If you're not going to do it, I understand. I just need to know, do we need to get more rooms or whatever, right?" And that was the first time I had thought about it, and I was like, you know what? I'm still going to do it. I want to do it. I think it'd be good for me. And I kind of already like, maybe I'll do it for Christian. And so I said, yeah. So I spent 2 weeks training up as much as I could for it, after 3 months off. And he came down, and so we went out to the Bandera. And I remember just being like, you know what? If I can get at least halfway done, I'll be happy, right? I just want to get at least more than halfway done, and like I'll take that as a win. And I mean, it was cold. It
I remember
was
seeing your stories and stuff on it.
yeah, it was cold. And so once I started at the starting line, and the gun had gone off, and we took off, I kind of told Christian, I was like, I'm gonna finish this for you. And once I said that, it was that kind of sealed the deal.
Yeah.
Like I was gonna finish it, and so. It was good, man. Like the first 20, 25 miles were good. I felt good, but then things I couldn't control started to happen. Like my knees started to swell up and hurt. My ankles then slowly started to hurt. And so those were things I couldn't control. Like it wasn't my nutrition. It wasn't my hydration. It wasn't anything like that was affecting me. It was things I couldn't do anything at the time. So I just either had to quit or push through it. And my wife and my friend's wife were going to the aid stations, and they would help us with like whatever we needed. They would make us like meals and stuff, and they were our crew for the race. Yeah. And so we had gone halfway, and my buddy's wife was going to do a race like the next day, a shorter race, and he wanted to be with her. And so he was like, you know what, I'm going to call it quits so I can go back with her and sleep and then do the race with her like the next day. And I was kind of upset with him because the whole point of this was to do this together.
Together, yeah.
And then after Christian, it was really important to me to finish.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, man, like, I need you here. Like, I need you to do this. Like, because if I want to quit, I know you won't let me.
Yeah.
And, you're supposed to be that battle buddy for this race. But he went in, and like, I didn't say anything. Well, he didn't go in. He went another 5 or 6 miles and then went in, but that was nighttime. And so since his wife wasn't going to be with Letty anymore, I didn't want her going to aid stations like by herself.
Yeah.
In the middle in the middle of the night. And so I was like, you know what? Just go back, get some sleep, and I'll finish it out. And so I get what I need for the night, and so now I'm going to be by myself the whole night, and my headphones die, and so Letty gives me hers, but they won't connect to my phone. So the whole night I had no headphones. My knees and ankles are just hurting bad. Like, I think I have a good pain tolerance for things like that. I can push myself, and I pushed myself through a lot. But, man, I was struggling. And, that was the first time I had struggled like that in a long time. And probably that was the worst of my life, only because I wasn't in shape for this.
Yeah.
So that aspect just made it 10 times worse.
Yeah.
And, I finished the race. It took me about 23 hours, and I finished it. And, it was emotional. It was an emotional thing for me because I did it for Christian. I didn't show it outwardly. I just finished it. I got my medal. I took a picture and went home, right? But, during that race, there were so many spiritual and things that happened, and just like mentally, it just did something struggling when I was struggling and pushing myself. And when that race was over with, I said, I need to do more of that, especially right now. When I'm struggling, when I'm hurting, that's when I feel close to Christian. I can really think about him and be with him during that. And Christian and I had always been together. I do my tournaments and stuff. He was always there. Jiu-Jitsu, he trained with me. You know, we were just always together for stuff like that. And so I always try, and he'd go to the range with me and he would shoot with me. He would go and watch me when I took like courses. So he was just always there, and I try to lead by example when it came to that. You know, if you just work hard, you know, you can accomplish things. And so I decided I wanted to do something else, and I have a buddy who had struggled with drug addiction and had his own like demons and stuff that he overcame, and he's very successful now. But one of the things he did was an Ironman race, and I had never really thought about doing it, and I was like, you know what, I want to do that. You know, I didn't really know how to swim like that. I knew how to swim, but not like that. I never biked before on like an actual road bike, and I really don't like running that much anymore. And so I was like, you know what, those things are going to push me because I don't really enjoy doing them. And so I think that would be the perfect race. And so I had called him and talked to him about it, and he's like, yeah, man, like just do the full. Don't do the half, just do the full. Like that's gonna be good for you, and I know that you're gonna do it. And so his name's Trip, and he was like, I think you're gonna kill it. I think it's gonna be good for you. And so I picked out a full that's gonna occur in September, but then I needed something in between that. So I saw that there was a half Ironman in Galveston in March, and so I signed up for that. And this is February. I'd never been on a bike. I never swam. Mid-February, I could barely swim like 50 yards, and I had to swim. I think it was 100 yards.
Oh, damn.
And so I had a lot to learn. Bought a bike, and was training, and went to that race in Galveston, and I didn't pass the swim time. So I didn't meet the cutoff. So everyone knew that I was doing this for Christian. They knew how important it was, like for me and stuff. And I had just failed. I didn't meet the cutoff time, and my race was over with. I didn't get to finish it. And so immediately after that race, I looked up and said, you know, I'm like, it's not gonna happen like that. So I signed up for the Ironman in Chattanooga in May, a couple weeks ago. And I said, no, like I have to accomplish this. So again, I went there and just told Christian, like, you know what, like we're gonna do this together again, just like January, and we'll do it. And, you know, and that's kind of what I do with all my trainings, that I have to push myself. And I did and completed the race in Chattanooga, and you know that was, I think, like for me, it was a great experience, and again an emotional experience to do that in honor of Christian. And I've done some other things, like I climbed like Guadalupe Peak, which is the highest peak in Texas.
Yeah.
And I hate heights. And if you hate heights,
Yeah.
going up there is crazy.
Especially with all that wind and stuff.
Yeah. And so I pushed myself to do that. I buried a picture of Christian like up there at the top, underneath that little pyramid they have, and did it for him. So I've done some things in his name, and then this past week, so there's an organization called Go Abundance, and Matt King is the CEO of Go Abundance. And last year he wanted to do something in 2026 that really helped people, and so he had linked up with a guy named Matt Johnson when he was running across Texas. And Matt Johnson had run across from Texas to raise money for Valor Fit for veterans. And so Matt came up with the idea of riding from Mexico down in Brownsville up to Canada. And his goal was to raise $1 million.
Oh, wow.
And he wanted to do 150 miles a day and 13 days. And so that was his goal. And I had been on Instagram one day, and his story had come across my feed, and I was like, man, like I want to do that. And so Matt lives kind of close to where I live and stuff, and so I reached out to him, and I said, you know, just introduce myself. I told him my story, and I said, man, I would love to just, you know, if I can, I would love to ride with you. I'm just now on this journey of Ironman, so I've been riding my bike and stuff, and I would love to just to like be a part of it and do it in honor of my son and do it to help your cause. And he reached back and he said yes. And so this past Friday was day 3 of the ride. And so I'd gone down there the evening of day 1, which was last Wednesday. And they started in Mexico and stopped in Alice And then I linked up with them. And then the day 2, they went from Alice to Seguin. And I had just helped them. I followed them and just helped with the support and logistics and stuff. And what was really cool about that is every cent of that $1 million is going to people in need. People, families, or organizations that are in need. And what's really cool about this, so he calls it The Ride. And what's really cool about this fundraiser is that you're actually getting to see and meet the people that are being affected positively, with this donation, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time, you donate to a cause, let's say an organization, you don't really get to see the end user, like who's actually getting that money, right? No, like throughout this 13 days, he's stopping and he's giving it to people. So I got to experience, 3 days or 2.5 days of stopping and getting to meet the people that were being blessed and hear their stories and like see the smiles like on their face and see the tears. And when they were in Seguin on day 2, my sister, who had been struggling a lot in her life, like I said, like my nephew is autistic. He's 25, but she just has had a very hard life, and their vehicle had broken down, and my nephew has seizures, and one of the things that brings on seizures is being hot.
Yeah.
And so, and they live in Dilley, so South Texas gets hot.
Yeah.
And so the cars on AC wasn't working well. The car was breaking down. So I had nominated my sister, and they actually chose her. So on Thursday, they surprised her with giving her $20,000 towards a new car.
Oh wow.
To help with her and Seth. And so Matt came and the crew came and they sat down and we got to meet them, or they got to meet Matt and the team and stuff. And, just, it was just amazing to see my sister's face, like people don't know exactly. Yeah, you do get to see the impact firsthand, but it goes so much deeper. Like you don't get to truly, you hear the story, but you don't truly get to know what that feels like, right? And I know what my sister goes through. I know what she's been going through the last 25 years with Seth. And I know the struggles that she's done. And I always tell her, she sees me as the one that succeeded. And I'm just like, dude, Amy, you're one of the strongest people I know. You don't have all the money in the world, but man, and you don't have the best house and stuff like that, but you have the biggest heart. You help others. And look what you face day in and day out with Seth. And you're still doing that every day you get up. And so I was to me, that's winning in life. That's more important. Not that you have money, not that you have a big house or fancy cars, but that you truly care and help people even when you may not have it, but you still give it.
And it does go deeper. And just sitting here and thinking about it and stuff, you'd be surprised, but I'm sure you've already thought about this, but a lot of this is also because of Christian. Because of the motivation that you had to continue to push yourself forward. That night, those headphones weren't a coincidence. Your friend leaving, that was Christian putting himself with you and saying, we're going to suck. We're going to embrace the suck together here. Yeah. You're going to get through it, and we're going to go further. And somehow, some way, you got through it. You figured it out. And then you had the Galveston thing go down, and then you got yourself into this other situation, and then you met this guy. And there's already a blessing for your sister. There's already blessings for other people. I'm telling you, man, I think his legacy is going to be huge. Yeah. It might not seem that way, but that's literally what's happening. You could have easily just been like, my legs and my knees are hurting. I'm out of here. But the fact that you got yourself into that spiritual mindset with Christian, those headphones gone, that seems like everything happened for a reason right there. Yeah. Everybody pretty much leaving, you sending your wife back, say, hey, don't worry about me. Don't go to these trails and stuff in the middle of the dark by yourself. That was Christian saying, all right, it's me and you, and we're going to do this. And there's going to be many more moments like that. I know it, man. Yeah. I know it, and I have you have my 100% support. And I mean, if we can do something and keep making it happen, let's do it, man. I'm all willing to jump in and help out and make Christian's legacy grow. But not only his legacy grows, but the things that we can do with Christian's legacy on pushing help to others, to be able to remember he was there getting help for himself, to make himself a better man, to make sure he didn't fall down a very bad path or anything. And it's going to happen, and his legacy is going to help other people. I know it will. And it's already started, man. And you're going to be surprised, and he's working through you. Like he's going to use you to work through you, man. And I think also in my just listening to your story, I think Christian's situation is also working on you to become a better man, to have more faith. I mean, just what you said about your daughter, your wife, like that's huge, man. Not a lot of guys can sit there and open up saying how they want to be better for their families. So this is a step forward. Remember, you said 2 steps forward, or 1 step forward, 2 steps back. It happens. God gave his life for us.
Yeah.
Right? He did that because he knew that was going to happen to us. And you know, as much as it's hard, because I still sometimes with faith question it so much. I'm like, why do you allow these things to happen? And in your situation, your son, his life is lost. It was given, right? And you're like, hard to wrap your head around it. But there's a bigger purpose behind it. And as much as right now it might not make sense, and it's almost like you don't want it to make sense, because why? It had happened already, but he's gonna move through him. He's gonna move through his story, and he's gonna make things happen for a lot of other people. And Christian might not be here with us today, physically, but spiritually he's here. And the fact that, like, I mean, for your sister, like that was a big thing already right there for her.
Yeah.
Right. And that all stemmed from literally Christian telling you, all right, we're doing this. Like, we're going to finish this tonight. And you continue on with your race. So I encourage you, man, to keep doing what you're doing. Like, you know, I know it's not easy right now, and I hope you keep getting help and keep, you know, talking to others and trying to, you know, finally come and, because I know it's not hard for you, or not easy for you right now. I know it's not. And we would probably both be lying right here saying that you're completely fine and you know you're pushing forward. I mean, just seeing you break down like that, it hurts me, man, just to see that. And I can only imagine the pain you're going through. But I want you to keep doing that, man. Like, I mean, this is a beautiful helmet you got going right here. Like, I think you have the opportunity right now to change a lot of things for people.
I think, you know, again, like it's not to say I'm better, but I truly believe, you know, our faith is tested through hard times. And so, you know, if I can lose my son and still, you know, praise God and thank him and just be so thankful for the grace that he gives us, even though my son's in heaven with him, you know, that's the true testament of faith. And it's not something that I just say, like, I truly feel that. And yeah, like, do I break down? Yeah, of course. I break down a lot because I miss my son. But, you know, ultimately, I'm at peace knowing that my son's in heaven, knowing that he's with Jesus. You know, that ultimately gives me peace. I mean, it still hurts and I still cry, but you know, that's what really helps me get through this. And I mean, that's one of the things that I just want people to know is that, you know, like, life isn't hopeless. You know, you can go through so much and life can knock you down and you think that you can't take like any more, but that's not true. And I didn't have faith like this, you know. I wish I would have had faith like this, you know, years ago, but I didn't. And it came to me in the hospital when my son was dying, and thank God it did. And so, you know, there might be a purpose, and me doing these races and me doing what I'm doing is my way on my healing journey. And I don't know if that actually works or not. I don't, like, but it's working right now. And it has allowed me opportunity to meet people like Matt, and, you know, I met a gentleman, Scott Christmas, in the Ironman. It's like guys that are going through things or doing great things or going through their own healing, that is allowing me opportunities to do things. And, you know, I don't want those opportunities for me. I want Christian's life to mean something. I want his name to mean something. I want him to continue to be able to have a positive impact in people's lives, even though he's gone. And I want him to have that impact for years to come. And so if I have to say his name and I have to, you know, do that by my actions and by telling his story, and that's what I want to do. And You know, that's any parent's wish. You know, like they want to know that their child's life meant something, and like they do, But I want this story to help others and to help people that are struggling, kids that are struggling, adults that are struggling, adults that think there's no way out or it can never get better, because it can, man. Just lean on Jesus, lean on your faith. I know it's hard. You know, I'm not an emotional guy. I'm not, but you know, I just gave in, and I just asked, like, you know, Jesus, help me. You know, like, I need you. And you know, for years I thought I could do it myself. You know, and it just doesn't work out like that until you just let yourself go and let your faith come into your life. And even then, it's still not hard. I mean, it's still not easy, you know?
Yeah.
Things don't change like immediately,
No, of course
but they
not.
slowly change. And if you really look at it, you slowly start to see the blessings. And like with Matt and the Go Abundance Ride, you know, just do a shout out right now. You know, I think they're on day 6 of 13 days. So they're still out there. They're still out there riding. And yesterday they gave $75,000 to a family who lost their child, their 1-year-old, you know, because they're struggling with medical bills. They gave $75,000 to that family, and then they gave another 25, and then another 20 grand, and then just throughout the day. That was just in one day that they're doing on that ride. So over $100,000 they gave out to families and people in need just in one day. So they're doing great things. So you can still donate. It's called The Ride. It's through Go Abundance. They have a site, and they have a donation link. They do a recap every day on YouTube. If you look at Matt King, The Ride, look them up, and they show you every day who they're helping, so you can see. And
Plug them in as well onto the links.
yeah, and that's the great thing. Like this helmet right here, this is from a gentleman. His name was Jason, and let me tell you a story about him. So when I first started the Ironmans, I wanted to get a custom helmet made, and this was back in January, because I want everything I wear to have like Christian Strong. And my buddy, who's a pro cyclist in Houston here, actually, he's on a team that has, you know, helmets and stuff that look all good. I said, hey man, like, where do y'all get y'all stuff done? And he said, you know, we go through Birdworks. Look up their social media. And so I did. And in January, I reached out to them. They asked me to email them. And so I did. I told them my ideas. I didn't hear back. You know, there was a mix-up. But this was in January, right? January 29th. I had not heard from them yet. That was my last email I followed up. Fast forward to April. I'm at Battlegrounds. Covenant Training Group, Nate and Mike are doing a class, CQB class. This gentleman is in from Nashville. He just became a reserve officer. He's a little bit older, and he wanted to do some training. He found this class in San Antonio, and he lives in Tennessee. He flew in. I kind of got away from jiu-jitsu and tactical stuff throughout this because me and Christian had done a lot of that. So I kind of went away because it was hard for me to do it. But then I slowly started coming back to it.
Yeah.
And Mike and Nate are great guys. And whenever they're doing classes, they'll invite me out because, you know, I train with them a lot like before. And they know what I'm going through. And they've been, man, a huge support. And so he was like, hey, man, we're doing like a CQB class. Just come out. And I said, all right, man, I'll come out. So I came out that day. And there's Jason. And me and him start talking and stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, you know, I live in Nashville. And I do helmets and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, man, I'm trying to get like a helmet done. He's like, yeah, just here's my number. You know, let's do something, right? Then in May, end of April, early May, me and Jason had been texting and stuff like that. Come to find out, he's the owner of Birdworks.
Oh, wow.
That was told to me in January. Then, you know, kind of got ghosted, but it was just an error, a mix-up in the email.
You just had to go through the
But
right
then
guy.
I meet him personally in April, not knowing, and then a couple of weeks later, I'm able to put 2 and 2 together, and I'm like, hey, bro, like, do you own Birdworks? He said, yes. I was like, dude, that's so crazy, because I was reaching out to y'all in January. And even he said, he goes, no, man, like, it's just faith. Like, there's a reason that I was
See,
there.
I tell you, man.
Yeah, that he was there. That he flew in from Nashville.
None of this is
to do a CQB class. He could have gone anywhere for a training. And then I normally didn't come at the time, but I'm slowly starting to get back into it. Nate and Mike, they invite me out. I come out, I meet him, and then I'm driving to Chattanooga for my Ironman race, and he had made this helmet.
And they're faith-based.
Like for me.
Covenant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And so this is from Birdworks. You know, Jason made me this. We're going to do some more stuff for a whole kit for my Ironman race. But yeah, man, this thing is amazing. Like, I was so happy. I was so emotional. Like, he doesn't, again, I'm not a very emotional guy. So he doesn't understand, like, how much this helmet means to me and just how much I love it. And so, you know, I really hope he truly understands how much this means to me. And I will have this for my entire life. I don't care if it cracks or whatever, but I will have this. This is an amazing thing. And when I did my first Ironman a couple weeks ago, I wore this. And I wore it on a triathlon last Monday on Memorial Day. I did a try with a buddy of mine, and we did it in honor of the members that have lost their lives in combat and stuff. And I got to wear this. And so, you know, this is a huge thing for me. But that story right there is something just so crazy, like out of the blue, that I'll meet him personally, and then we come together. And then the same with Go Abundance.
Yeah.
You know, just one simple board on Instagram. I see that. I reach out. They reach back out. And then last Friday, we had this huge thing. And that's going to open up more opportunities for me through Matt. And, man, it's just, you know, like, I love helping other people. Like, it's always been that way. Like, I feel good giving back. You know, like, Christmas time, I don't want any gifts. I just want to watch people open gifts. Yeah. I hate opening gifts because it just feels weird to me to get something. I just want to give. And so that's what brings me, like, satisfaction. That's what brings me some mental, like, healing and comfort. And I get to now do it in Christian's name.
I tell you what, man, it just came to my thoughts right now, but Operation Path Forward, then Berserker built. It's a good buddy of mine, Tim DeMeo. He was on a podcast as well here. He lost his wife not too long ago to cancer, and she was creating an amazing nonprofit to help out veterans in need, and they were starting up land up in Montana and stuff to help these guys out, and we had a lot of plans. I was going to go out there and help with some firearm stuff and everything, and just kind of get packs ready for vets to come out there and just give them that sense of, like, hey, you still accepted, brother. Like, we still have something going for you. But I know his nonprofit right now hasn't really kicked off as much as he wanted and everything. But I just thought about this while you're telling me all this stuff. But if you're willing to do it, and I'm sure you are, I'm willing to do it. But if you're down, let's sign up for a triathlon together and try to help Tim out. Yeah, and raise funds for him and, you know, push for Path Forward, you know, Operation Path Forward. And I think, you know, like he said, he's wanting to continue living Tabitha's legacy through Operation Path Forward. And what better than to get Christian and Tabitha together, right?
Yeah.
And push for something, not only, like I talked about it right now, hours ago when we started this conversation, we might be able to reach out to some of these guys and help guys that are in need and stuff. And I think that when you just said that right now, I'm like, well, better than one, to motivate myself to get out there and start doing it again, you know, and at the same time, help somebody in need, you know.
Let's do it.
I'm all game.
It can be a try. It can be an ultra marathon.
Yeah, well, I'll probably start at a try first.
Okay, yeah. They're all hard, but yeah, I would love to do it. I mean, it's
I'm totally up for it, man. We can go out there and do it. I mean, you can help guide me because you're doing it now. So, you know, I'm just getting back on the saddle of all that stuff, getting ready for that other race in Dallas. But it'll be great. It'll be great for me. It'll be great for you. It'll be great for everyone. And at the same time, we're pushing what really matters. You know,
awesome.
and we can continue Christian's legacy, man.
Thank you. I mean, and there's another Ironworks. They're a supplement company.
Oh, yes.
I reached out to them, told them my story, and, you know, they have professional athletes, like, on their roster, you know. They don't have to talk to me or do anything with me, but, you know, they love my story, they love what I'm doing, and they wanted to help. So they offered to sponsor me. So I get all my supplements, like, from them, and, like, the owners are great. And so, like, there's just little things like that. Like, you know, does that helps me prepare for the things that I want to do, that help
Yeah.
me spread like Christian's, you know, legacy and story, and help as many like people as we can. And so, you know, companies like Ironworks, company like Birdworks, you know, Covenant with Nate, like those are real companies that like truly care about their customers
Yep.
as family. You know, they're not just numbers. They're not just, you know, money coming in. Like, no, they're people that, you know, they're doing this for a reason,
Yeah.
and that's to help other people.
Yeah.
And so those are the companies that I've been blessed to know and get to work with. And like Matt with GoBundance, you know, like he's a CEO of GoBundance. Like, he doesn't have to do this, but he does it because he wants to. And then his entire crew, like out there, man, is just killing it. And you know, there's nothing better than helping others. And yeah, I would love to work with him. And just, you know, like losing a child is tough. Losing a spouse is tough. Losing anybody's hard. You know, like it hurts.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm gonna link you and
we
Tim
shouldn't
up.
bury our children. That's one thing. You know, are we gonna bury our parents one day? But we should never have to bury our children.
No, I know.
And as a man, I don't want to bury my wife. I'd rather my wife bury me first. But yeah, man, like loss is hard.
Oh, I know.
And so like my heart goes out to him and
It was tough.
anybody
lost,
that's lost somebody.
They found out she had cancer when they had their baby, and they were in the hospital and found out she had cancer, and all that happened, and it's tough, man. So I know how much that would mean for him, especially right now. I know he's really trying to get his company off the ground and stuff, and he's, you know, she was the backbone to it all.
Yeah.
So, you know, I definitely think that that's something that came to my heart right now, and like, hey, you know what, like, what better time to, you know, do something to help Tim out, and at the same time, you know, push out what really matters, and it's their legacy. So I'm all for that. But brother, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Yeah,
man.
thank you.
It
Had
was
a
an
great
honor
time.
to have you on, and you know, I know your story is not easy to tell. So I really, like I said, I really respect the fact that you were willing to come on and talk about that. So, you know,
I appreciate it.
We'll
Thank you.
continue to push that, and any links and stuff, we'll add them to the YouTube and all the social medias and stuff, and we'll have it. Honestly, I'll have this ready to go by tomorrow. So
Awesome. Thank you, buddy.
appreciate it, brother.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh.